December 5th, 2022. May I have a roll call, please?
Okay. Here we go. Chair Miller,
Here?
Vice Chair Claus,
Here.
Board Member Anderson,
Here.
Board Member Killian,
Here.
Board Member Klein.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Going on to public comment, any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that would like to speak?
If those are attending in person and wish to make oral public comment on any item, you can do so at this time. I'm not seeing any. Ms. Gu, do we have any raised hands on Zoom?
I'm checking Zoom. I do not see any raised hands at all. Thank you.
Okay, we can close general public comment.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to the approval of the minutes for the Single Family Design Board for November 30th, 2022. Can we go through those items, please?
Chair Miller, board members, we received a request to postpone reviewing these meeting minutes because they were just distributed to you all prior to the hearing. So just to give some ample time for review, we can push it to the 12/19 hearing for the November 30th full board hearing meeting minutes only. We'll still review the consent meeting minutes today.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, let's move on to consent calendar for December 5th, 2022.
Okay. Item A, 639 Island View Drive. Received project design approval and must continue to consent for final approval with the required findings. Item B, 36 Rincon Vista Road. Received final approval. Item C, 347 Salida del Sol. Received final approval. Item D, 903 Alston Road. Received project design approval and final approval with the required findings. That concludes the meeting minutes.
All right, thank you. Any changes or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
May I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Can I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
okay. Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like that's the only agenda items to approve for this meeting, so we'll move on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items and appeals. Do we have anything like that?
Yes. Let's see. So the SFDB quorum changes are now in effect as of December 1st. So this is the first full board hearing where they are effective. Quorum is considered 3 members, and the membership is more open-ended. It can be any 3 board members. And let's see, the vote will be by the simple majority, correct? Yeah. Again, the new member appointment is December 6th, so we should be receiving a new board member in the near future. We've also ordered some new fresh copies of the SFDB guidelines, so we put that order in with admin staff and we will be able to distribute it shortly. And Ms. Kokinda has an announcement about the State Street Working Group.
Yes, Chair Miller and board members. So this is just a reminder that Tess Harris, who's a State Street Master Planner, shared on the 30th that there are some upcoming workshops this week. So December 9th is Friday, and then Saturday, December 10th. There's one in the morning on December 9th that's mostly geared for architects and designers. And then there's some for the community. There will be childcare provided. And so again, just as a recommendation, if you're interested in participating, or please encourage others that you know to stop in and participate. And there's also the survey. That's the easiest thing. That's the minimal thing that you can do, is to take the survey of just that's online and on the State Street Create State webpage. So just a reminder for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I actually did fill out that survey and put in my little 2 cents, so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
And then I have an announcement. I have
Yes.
to step down for item 1, 2, and 4 today. So
Oh
I'll
my
only,
gosh.
I know, I will only be reviewing 3.
All right. I hope in our future we get a couple more people with landscape experience on our board, since so Katie doesn't have to carry all the weight.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, the way that the membership was set up was to provide maximum flexibility for city council to appoint members. So it's at their discretion if they want to, I know that was input that Vice Chair Collas had mentioned, and for future reference, and we can make efforts to try to get people to apply in that realm. So that is always a possibility.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Chair Miller, I have to excuse myself for item 3.
Okay,
Thank you.
anyone else? All right, let's move on to item 1.
Because that means we're going to have to vote on that unanimously then, right?
Yeah. It's 130 Camino Alto Road. This is a continued item. Project design approval is requested. Proposal to construct a 3,381 square foot single unit residence with a 488 square foot attached two-car garage and a 251 square foot attached workshop on a vacant lot located in the Hillside Design District. Project includes a 262 square foot patio, 448 square foot of raised deck, infill of an existing privacy wall off Camino Alto, and grading, 569 cubic yards cut, 501 cubic yards fill, 32 cubic yards fill import. A minor zoning exception was previously accepted by the SFDB to allow the trash enclosure located in the front yard. The proposed total of 4,120 square feet on a 34,576 square foot lot is 85% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings, hillside district and slope lot findings, grading findings, and minor zoning exception findings are required. The project was last reviewed on September 12th, 2022. Do we have minutes from the previous meeting?
One, the board supports the minor zoning exception requested to allow the trash enclosure to be located within the front yard. 2, the board appreciates the change to the native sandstone veneer in an ashlar pattern. 3, the board appreciates efforts to step down the southwesterly portion of the project, however, reduce further to meet hillside design guidelines. 4, the board has concerns regarding the style, size, bulk, and scale of the proposed residence, particularly the southwesterly side, as it relates to natural topography and the two flanking neighboring properties, particularly the Mediterranean residence to the south, and how to find the proposed project to be compatible with the neighborhood. 5, study the proposed upper roof deck to make it more integrated into the architecture. Chair Miller, board members, we do have some brief staff comments regarding this project before the applicant presentation.
Okay.
So this project was deemed complete on 11/16, and they need an action, a decision by 2/14, and we're nearing the end of the year here. And the applicant can dive further into how they've studied the previous board comments and have found that the project meets the design guidelines. But we just wanted to recognize the plans haven't necessarily changed much since the last review, but again, they will dive into providing support for the neighborhood. The neighborhood is heavily screened from the public right-of-way, so, and you will see all that in their presentation, but we just wanted to recognize that ahead of their presentation.
All right, thank you very much. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us how you address those.
Sure. I am Lino Granata from Stillwater Dwellings. On my right here, we have Demir Hamami. He is the owner of the property. And everybody knows Katie. And Demir has owned the property since 2010.
Okay.
He purchased the property after the T fire took care of this A-frame house that was there before, which establishes a plateau that we're essentially building on. So although it's a hillside, there's sort of a natural area for building this house, established by what was there before. Let me go to the drawings we'll focus on the three items of most concern right now, namely the stepping down, the scale, and the deck. And it's worth recapping that, you know, the materials have been approved. I think we use high-quality materials of stucco, wood, and natural stone on this. We have an 85% FAR on this. As noted earlier, the project is not visible from many vantage points at all. No neighbor has opposed to the project, nor does this project block any views. And, you know, to the east, downhill, the closest street is 2,500 feet away, and, you know, almost 300 feet lower than where the house is. So it can't really be viewed very much at all. I'm going to jump to the elevations, and I'm sure you guys will have questions to follow. The plans haven't changed in terms of the footprint. We're still in the 85% FAR. On this page, I have a series of comparisons. This first comparison is the east side, and let me zoom in on this. This is the previous design over here that we have. And you'll notice that one of the biggest factors here is the exposed retaining wall here and the pedestrian access to the east side of the property. This has really increased the apparent height of this elevation. And what we are proposing over here is to raise the grade, but essentially we're following the natural grade.
Yeah.
And the apparent height now is from, I want to say it was about 28 feet. We're now at 25 feet, apparent height. Let me jump to the south elevation here. And in the red is sort of the proposed outline for direct comparison. So this was a previous version here. And you'll notice, you know, the steps that came down for access on the east side. Our elevation now, again, significantly shorter apparent height. We've also dashed in the southerly neighbor
Great.
for direct comparison on that as well. We have done some studies as well, including introducing an intermediate step, but felt like having a higher ceiling doesn't necessarily benefit the owner. What we did instead, I can go right to the section actually, direct comparison in the section, is we raised the westernmost portion to create a more distinctive step from one level to the other, so it follows the hillside a little better. Again, for direct comparison, this red is what we're showing right now. We have decreased the ceiling heights and the floor structure to lower this middle level as well. In terms of the neighborhood context, we have sort of the model underneath, so you'll see that we're sort of matching Google Earth in this case.
Yeah.
Both neighbors have sort of built up their grades to the east. And in terms of the two-story sections, you'll notice that there's a two-story section here directly to the south, two-story section or volumes throughout. I mean, it's sort of a typical massing for this area. In fact, it seems like the one-story house is an anomaly for this neighborhood. Here's sort of a blow-up view of this area. The apparent heights, it seems like all the neighbors are following an apparent height of about 25 feet. So it seems like we are matching the established sort of spring point or plate height. We have inserted the landscaping, the existing and proposed. It is sort of screened back a little bit so you can see the screening that's intended here. This wall on the neighbors is not extended, but you'll notice this two-story massing here. And the neighbor to the south with its two-story massing, you'll note that that 2 stories takes place on the northern portion of the site. And we had conducted a sun study on this. On the left is a series of 3 snapshots, all in July, 9, noon, and at 3 p.m. And you'll notice in the summertime, there's really no issues any time of the day. Then we took November, which we obviously get longer shadows, and you'll see that we're actually getting a little impacted by that neighbor to the south. Now, we don't have any landscape shown for sun study purposes. It's just pure massing. But since we stepped down our volume, I think our neighbor to the north is well protected. We don't really have any shadow problems any time of the day. But this neighbor does sort of grace our property with their shadow. The deck portion, I believe that was a newer comment. I think the outstanding comment from the first design review was about railing. But we did have a parapet wall that came across the west side, and we have turned the corner over here. So we have a parapet wall on 2 sides, leaving a railing only on the east side. This middle portion, we're planning on using PV panels on this. And with our roof overhangs, it gives us opportunity for passive cooling on this. And obviously with the parapet wall, it's the most efficient solution for PV systems. Here's sort of a view of that deck over here. So we'll have the parapet wall come across on this side, one over here, leaving only sort of one view area. That gives, just that little bit more privacy, although it really isn't very visible from any vantage point. Demir, was there anything that I missed that you wanted to?
Sorry, I was not paying attention earlier. I was taking care of something else. Did you mention the drop down or the lowering of the deck to have that step down effect intensified?
Yes. Yeah. And Katie, was there anything to revisit?
No, landscape has not changed. I'm just here for questions.
What deck are you referring to? I'm sorry. I'm kind of.
And if you could just turn your microphone on and speak into the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Sorry.
Do I just put?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just push that button and just be conscious of speaking into the microphone,
Sure.
please.
Which deck were you referring? Oh, down there at the bottom?
Yes. Our attempt to intensify that stepping down
Got it.
effect.
All right, thank you. Was that the conclusion of your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Did we get public input?
Chair Miller, board members, we did not receive written correspondence on this item that was distributed prior. So Ms. Gu, if you could please switch to my screen. For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time by selecting the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. And while we're waiting for those on Zoom, if anyone attending here today in the audience wishes to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time. Thus far, I've only received speaker slips for a different item. Seeing none. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands. Thank you.
All right, this concludes public comment.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for question. One real question, clarity regarding Ms. Klein. Do we have to read the sole propriety thing? How does that work in this kind of thing? Should I read that into the record? Okay. The State Fair Political Practices Act, Regulation 18702.4B5 states that an official may appear before the Design or Architectural Review Committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural or engineering drawings or landscaping which the official has prepared for a client. Katie Klein is a sole practitioner and is using this exception, understanding certain limits regarding advocating on behalf of their client. All right. Okay, you're welcome. Get that out of the way. Now we'll move to questions. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
I have 3 questions. You noted the sections are very helpful, and so are a couple of the 3D models that you did from, I'll call it the easterly side of the property. They help to illuminate relationships well between the residences, so thank you for that. So you had noted, I think in this section that's in front of us, that you were or had decreased ceiling heights. So I'm wondering how much you decreased those and to what the floor to floor or what the floor to ceiling height is in those areas now.
We had decreased the floor thickness from 24 inches to 18 inches, so that lowered the whole upper floor.
Okay.
And then we decreased the upper floor by another 6 inches.
Okay, so you brought it down a foot. Okay, great. And then relative to that, you also made a comment, something about increasing the height of something on the west.
Yes. This section over here has been increased by a foot. And the purpose of that was to introduce transom windows on this side to get eastern light, but also to reinforce the step from one level to the next. Because before it was not as much. So just by, increasing this, you can see the step is more distinctive.
Okay. Okay, those were the only questions I have. The other items are comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Yes. Can you go back to the site plan and just orient us again with road and site dropping down? Sorry, I've reviewed many projects and I just want to reorient myself with yours.
We have 2 scales. One sort of shows the full property. The snapshot is a drone shot. It's
Right.
not to scale from what's above. We just sort of couldn't fit it. But the purpose was showing the proximity of the neighbors. So
Right.
the building site is, there's existing trailer right over here, so this building site is sort of right in the zone.
Right, and so Camino Alto is up higher.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, right up here.
Yeah, and it's sloping down, and your 2-story volume is at the front of the site.
Correct.
Okay, then I need you to go to the elevation, the west elevation, or the section that gives the plate height there of that 2-story volume.
Okay. Before going there, if you don't mind, I can go to the site section to the road for a little additional
Sure.
clarity here. So this is sort of what's happening from the road down.
Gotcha, right. So showing the two-story volume closer to the road, yeah.
And this is the two-story volume beyond.
Yeah, understand. So, right, if you could go to the elevation and show the plate heights, that would be super helpful.
So we have a 9-foot plate height?
So the two-story volume, though, I think you have a 12-foot 8.
Oh, yes, you're right, 12-foot 8.
12-foot 8, right. So that's the concerning one for me. Okay, and your apparent, I'm not, just if you could clarify, apparent height, to me, it's either it is or it isn't. So the apparent definition that you're stating is.
Understood, yes. It's actually, it's part of the design review guidelines that they specify what apparent height is, which is from a finished grade to the top.
Well, right, so it really isn't apparent, it is or it isn't from your finished grade. I don't know, it's just a technical thing for me. And then also your red line, another kind of technical thing, you're raising the grade in order to potentially reduce the plate height, is what you discussed with your comments.
Yes.
Today.
Yes, so in the design guidelines, they do give a provision for raising the grade.
Yep,
It's following, natural grade.
right,
And that, in turn, would affect the apparent height, which is sort of the goal of what we're trying to do for our volume.
right, gotcha. Yes, and then going to your perspectives, and they were just super amazing. Really, the job is for you to convince us of how it fits on the hillside. So the way you place the building into the perspective to show us how it relates to the neighbors is super great. Thank you so much for that extra work. And you are proposing white on the stucco.
Yes, we're matching sort of the surroundings, the neighborhood.
Okay. I think that's my only questions. Thank you.
On a follow-up, I mean, I look at the white here, that's actually an off-white, right?
The stucco is mainly for the two-story volume, so let me see if I can go to the side here. You'll see this white on this upper portion over here. A lot of the main floor is it's stone and glass. And
Well, I'm looking at your chip on this picture, and
here we go.
There it is.
yeah,
So the garage portion, the volume above, and then wrapping the southern elevation, which is matching the neighbor's white stucco house. So all along this side, it matches this white stucco.
okay. Anyway, all right, move on to Board Member Art Keeling. Do you have any questions, please?
I do. Can we go back to I think you were at it before, the 3D view that shows the roof deck? Oh, just
Oh, I'm sorry.
on the right. Can you zoom in on that?
Sure.
Thanks. I just want to confirm the change. So you had mentioned the parapet wall has wrapped around to continue on another side.
Correct. The previous version had the railing that wrapped around this side as well.
Okay. Any other modifications that were done since the last review?
No.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can we look at the minutes again real quick? I just want to review it again. I was trying to look.
Oh. Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's my question, so we'll move on to comments. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any comments, please?
I appreciate you pulling the parapet around on the westerly side. I think that's helpful. As well as the decrease in the ceiling heights. I think it would be helpful to have, and I know this is a tough one because in terms of the way submittals are processed now, everything's electronically, but a lot of times in my experience, when we're looking at whites in Santa Barbara, we tend to gravitate a little bit more towards a warmer white than a yellowy white. And so the white that I'm seeing on here is a little bit of a concern. Either that or more of a muddy white, I would say, a warmer or a muddy rather than a yellow. And so it's hard to tell that because I know the rendering index on these are always off.
Yes. So, yeah, what we currently have is the fine sand, the Omega floral white.
Okay, and I'm not familiar with that. I would need to see an actual color swatch. So I don't know, that might be part of a motion maybe. I guess I'm just making that comment for the board's benefit, that might be part of a motion if we get to a point where this moves on, that we would actually want to see a sample.
Of course.
I understand what you've done in an attempt to differentiate volumes and create more of a stepped condition, and I appreciate that. But I'm concerned with the manner in which you are achieving that, which is effectively to raise one volume and bring grades up to change apparent heights, as opposed to actually bringing down volumes, which I think was more the direction of the board previously. I'll just leave that as my comment for now and see if the other board members have more specific thoughts on that or not. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, please.
Yes, hard. So for me, the natural appearance of the hillside, and I mean, again, thank you for the documents and the drawings. They're just like so great. It makes it so much easier for us to review the drawings when, you know, you take the time to do the perspectives and the colors, and they're very clear. For me, though, the natural hillside, every day when I drive shoreline, to me it's as important to be able to look at the view on the road as it is, you know, open out to the ocean or up the hillside as it is in the opposite direction. So I was struggling when I reviewed the plans earlier with the 2-story volume and the 12-foot 8 plate on that 2-story volume. But looking at it now, it's not the entire structure. So I'm less likely to, you know, have a strong opinion that you need to drop it. But yeah, I mean, I second the opinion of the plate heights weren't as significantly reduced as I was looking to see. So yeah, the color white too, I would second that to something a little warmer. Thank you, that's all.
All right, thank you. Board Member Arkalian.
I have some comments. Appreciate the improvements to the plate heights in certain areas and showing the before and after with the red line. That really helps me, really helps illustrate the changes. I appreciate the improvement to the roof deck by adding adding that parapet. I'm not sure if that is enough. It's a concern, but it's not like something I would push. You know, you've been here a few times. I appreciate you considering all of our comments over the meetings, and I believe aside from my concern with the roof deck and bringing the physical color sample, I think the project is ready for PDA. That's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much addressed our issues as far as architectural compatibility. Yeah, it's one of these situations where the preference is Mediterranean, but, you know, as far as size, bulk, and scale and visual impact, I think it's minimal. And, you know, homes are a very personal thing for people, so it's like, we need to respect that. So I just follow up with what the other people on our board commented, so I think that's about all I need to say. They're here for project design approval if someone feels like they are ready to draft a motion.
I'll make a motion that the project be continued to consent calendar for final approval with the following comment. And that's, I'm sure there's more that we need to make in terms of typical findings, but the one comment would be that we receive a physical color board, or that you bring one with you to consent when you come for finishes. And
Vice
then
Chair
if you want to bring
Kawas,
up
can I
findings-
just clarify, do you want a total color board or just the physical sample of the white stucco?
I would like a complete color board because they are calling out natural sandstone, and I would like to be ensured that that is actually Santa Barbara sandstone as opposed to a veneered and manufactured stone.
Ms. Gill, can you please switch over?
So in light of the comments, we would be making neighborhood preservation findings that this is consistent in appearance with the scenic character of the city. We do think it is compatible in terms of size, bulk, and scale with the neighborhood, specifically the more, I guess I'll call it the more west, I guess it would be the more northerly, it's a tough one. I'll call it the uphill side neighbor, or the uphill side portion of the home is one story, which relates well to that neighbor. And that the second story is associated with the flanking neighbor that is 2 stories. That quality architectural materials are being used, specifically in terms of the native sandstone being proposed. I don't think we're expecting any trees to be removed as part of this, so item D is somewhat moot. And the public health, safety, and welfare are being appropriately protected and preserved. Views from, I think that, is that Camino Alto, are going to be protected from the public, or for the public, from the roadway on the north side of the parcel. And again, good neighborhood guidelines, we think, are being protected in terms of privacy and views, specifically in terms of how the project is masked. I think I already addressed item G. The project is stepped well and is responsive to topography in terms of the way it's masked and steps down on the hillside. And there's really no significant grading going on as a result of the fact that this is a parcel that had a previous residence on it, and they're taking advantage of that existing building pad.
Okay, could I have a
And
second?
in order to make these findings, I'd just like to be assured by staff that this has been reviewed. You said it's complete, so it's been reviewed for stormwater management?
That is correct. They're subject to Tier 3 stormwater requirements, and the project will be rerouted to the Creeks Division prior to returning for final approval.
Okay. So, given that, the fact that there's a proper stormwater management plan for the project, item 1 has been met, and there are no oak woodlands being affected or removed as part of the project. So I can make these findings.
Chair Miller, Vice Chair Kawas, can you please also add the minor zoning exception for the trash enclosure location previously reviewed by the board?
Yeah, we can also make finding for the minor zoning exception for the trash. This is to provide proper screening and to make it easily accessible and functional for both the owners as well as the public agencies that serve rubbish removal.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
May I have roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Akilian,
Yes.
and Board Member, oh, sorry. Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. And there's a 10-day appeal period for this project. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So. All right, moving on to item 2. This is a continued item. Project design approval is requested. It's 1269 Farello Road. Proposal for substantial redevelopment of the existing non-conforming residence involving demolition and construction of a new 3,705 square foot, 3-story residence conforming to the required setbacks with a 450 square foot garage. Additional improvements include removal of the existing driveway and curb cut to be replaced with a new curb cut and access bridge at the new garage location. New photovoltaic array infrastructure, a pool, and hardscape and landscape improvements throughout. The proposed total of 3,361 square feet on a 12,197 square foot lot is 84% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. Includes 50% floor area reduction for the partially below-grade basement. The property is adjacent to a historical resource in the English vernacular style of 1277 Farello Road. Project design approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings, hillside design district, and slope lot findings and grading findings are required. Project was last reviewed on September 12th, 2022. Do we have minutes for those, for that previous meeting, please?
Chair Miller, before this item begins, I need to make a statement. There was an ex parte communication that occurred at the last meeting with the applicant after the agenda item ended. And I just want to reassure everybody that I am in a position where I can make an impartial determination on this project.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Chair Miller, board members, 1, consider restudying the roof elements for a mix of flat and pitched roofs. 2, provide a comprehensive neighborhood study, scale, and map of immediate vicinity with the number of stories, architectural style, and floor to lot area ratio, FAR. 3, restudy the window glazing along the south elevation and consider a solar design study. If possible, consider the placement of the solar panels and to work with adjacent neighbors. 4, consider a reduction in the proposed 88% FAR. 5, return with a material board and color board. 6, continue discussions with adjacent and surrounding neighbors concerning but not limited to decks and privacy issues and to increase overall neighborhood compatibility. 7, consider a reduction in plate heights. 8, provide a landscape plan with 3D imagery and or drawings, including landscape plantings that demonstrate privacy screening. And 9, the board is in support of allowing the existing encroachment to remain in the side yard setback due to topography and the potential cost of removal.
All right, thank you. If you could introduce, yes.
Board, Chair Miller, we have some brief staff comments before the applicant presents.
Okay, before you say that, should I read the legal sole proprietor thing again?
Yes.
Okay. The State Fair Political Practices Act Regulation 18702.4B5 states that the official may appear before a design or architectural review committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural or engineering, landscaping drawings which the official has prepared for a client. Katie Klein is a sole practitioner and is using this exception, understanding certain limits regarding advocating on behalf of their client. So, if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Chair Miller. So If we can return to the project description. Thank you. So as noted in the project description, this particular project constitutes substantial redevelopment. And just as a reminder, what that means is either the building will be completely demolished or 2 out of 3 conditions occur within a 5-year period. This particular project will remove more than 50% of the structural elements of the roof and exterior walls. In addition, this particular project will be removing existing encroachments. The existing residence is considered legal non-conforming to the front and interior setbacks. As part of the project, they'll be removing all of those encroachments, so the new residence will be conforming to the required setbacks. And lastly, the architectural historian, Nicole Hernandez, prepared a memo, which you should have received, just giving context within the neighborhood of buildings on the historic resources inventory list, as well as any designated buildings. Adjacent to the project site is a English vernacular style residence, which is on the historic resources inventory, and down the street is a mid-century modern building that is a designated structure of merit. Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you very much. If you'd like to present your project and how you address the notes on the minutes.
Great, thank you. Before I get started, as Board Member Kloss mentioned, there was a quite unpleasant exchange at the end of our last meeting, and we do not share her confidence that she'll be able to be impartial. In fact, we observed that there was some prejudice, what we thought seemed to be some prejudice against one of our team members that seemed related to projects other than this one and past relationships. So you'll notice that he's absent because we felt that it was affecting the ability of the board to be unbiased. So.
Mr. Chair, if I could have your attention briefly,
Please.
and pardon my interruption, but we have talked with the city attorney's office, and the city attorney felt confident that Vice Chair Kloss could proceed based on our conversation and the review and talking to multiple parties. So my suggestion is to continue with your project description and presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, so we have with us today Janet McGinnis, who is our client's attorney. Janet, was there something else that you wanted to say?
I shared your concern, and I appreciate what the city attorney's opinion may be, but we know what your code of conduct is for the board, and we're just trying to make a record to protect and preserve our record. And there is a record now that there's been an ex parte and a very unpleasant and biased contact by a member, and so we respect and appreciate that you feel you can be objective and fair, and we hope that's so, but please don't prevent him from making his record for his
And I want it
client.
on the record that our board is subjective. It is for design approval and review, so it is a subjective, and it could be a very gray area, so I just want that in the record as well. Thank you. All right, please proceed.
Okay, so the board asked us to do a comprehensive neighborhood study. So that's what you have above us is we've used the definition of neighborhood that you have included in your single-family design guidelines, which is a quarter-mile radius bounded by major arterials and geographic features such as ravines of interconnected roads. There's something like 213 houses in the neighborhood as you define it, and that's us there at the middle. So we've studied every property in this neighborhood. They're all listed here, including square footages, addresses, sizes, etc. We've gone out and sorted them by size. We are 16th on the list by size. There's 15 houses that are bigger than us. There was another point I wanted to make there. Excuse me, guys. Notice that some of those on the list that are bigger than us are right in our immediate vicinity. The next spread here on page 7, we have sorted them by FAR, and we are 40th on the list. Ranked by FAR, so there's 39 houses that have larger FARs than we do. And many of those on this list of larger FARs are right on our street in the immediate vicinity. So you'll notice that that 1255 Farello Road, which is the structure of merit, that's just a few houses down from us, is a larger FAR, and that's a flat-roofed modern house. You'll notice that 1257 Farello Road is on the list, a couple on Rubio, 1304 Farello Road. There's like 10 houses on this list or so that are larger FARs that are right in our immediate vicinity, even on the same street, even on the same section of the same street. Okay, we have all these FAR calculator exhibits here for you, but I'm gonna just lightning round through those. Let me know if you want to study anything in specific. Okay, so back to some of the context up on Rubio, some of the many other 3-story houses in the neighborhood. This is one of the neighbors' houses that we focus on. This neighbor was kind enough to invite me in so I could study the views of the story poles that we put up from her house. We're not impacting her ocean view. We're not interrupting the horizon or the ocean from her view. This is a 3-story house that is completely vertical.
It's 1281?
That's 1281 Farello, yeah. So this is another house that has a larger, that is larger than our house. It's about same side of the street. It's about 4 houses, 3, 4, or 5 houses down the street from us. And I think this is a really good example to demonstrate that we're compatible with the neighborhood, because this house is massed very similar to the way we're massed. This might actually be 3.5 stories or so. It's near vertical 3 stories on the downhill side, which we're not. We're terraced back, and it's 2+ from the street side. Like our project, there are strategic trees here which are shielding and softening this house from the street. But I think from any objective evaluation, we are compatible with this house in terms of mass, bulk, and scale and size. Another house further up, I'll skip by some of these that are that I don't want to focus on. This is another house that we think is very, very important to study to determine neighborhood compatibility. This is a large 3-story flat-roofed modern house. It's a great-looking house. It's a stone's throw away from us.
1314?
1314 Farello Road. This house was approved by the Single Family Design Board, by you. You have determined that this house is compatible with the neighborhood, both in terms of mass, bulk, and scale, and in terms of architectural style. We share many design features with this house that you've determined is compatible. This is another house that was approved by you, a flat-roofed modern house. It's only 1 house away from our house, from the subject property.
What's the address?
This is 917 Farello, Paseo Farello. Again, we share many design features with this house. I think this is a great-looking house. It's got this, like the other modern houses, shares a relationship to its neighbors like we do, with having a variety of architectural styles surrounding it. It's not as if these houses are in a neighborhood of all modern houses. They are in a neighborhood sprinkled with modern houses, and we are part of that same neighborhood. This house, again, is a very, very important house to point out as a precedent. It's a structure of merit. This is the only house on the street that has this elevated historic designation. So the city of Santa Barbara has determined that not only is this an important part of the neighborhood, but that it should be protected. So from a historical standpoint, this is the most important house of the neighborhood. If we're going to be compatible with any house, it should be this flat-roofed modern house. And we are objectively completely compatible with this. Flat roofs, cantilevering decks, large expanses of glass, multi-level facades.
For the record, can you say the address? So it's
Thanks,
clear?
Janet. Yeah, that's 1255 Farello Road. This also has a larger FAR than our project. It's only 2 doors away. This is a photo simulation of the view of our proposed project from our neighbor uphill, Rick and Adele. We studied this view and met with them multiple times. You can see that it doesn't break the horizon at TV Hill, and further to left is an expansive ocean view. Another photo simulation coming down the street. I've got other pictures of the story poles we put up so you can see more clearly what that looks like. And a photo simulation of our proposed project coming up the street. So these are the most important public viewpoints. There are no other public viewpoints that are significant. There are distant views when the house recedes into the overall development of the Riviera. You can see the house, as I mentioned, shares commonalities with the other houses that the Single Family Design Board has approved in this neighborhood: flat roofs, wood siding, horizontal eave lines, expanses of glass on the private side. I mean, on the side facing the downhill, and more private on the uphill side facing the street. Another distant view of our proposed project. We, as you requested, we did a lot of work with the neighbors. Between last meeting and this meeting, you heard from a lot of neighbors that were far afield, that were up on Rubio, a whole street away, way down the street, that can't even see the property from their property. So we did focus on neighbors that were immediately adjacent. Charlie and Consuelo immediately to our west, Rick and Adele to the north, VJ next to them. This is Isabel's.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Chair. Just a note to the audience, this is the applicant's time to speak, and everybody needs to be quiet due to respect. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Isabel's house next to it, and Rose and Michael here. And then also Margaret's house at 914 Paseo Frello immediately below. And we did a lot of work to take photos, look at the story poles, meet with them directly. And I'll show you a lot of the responses that we had, although I'm a little bit worried about time running out on us, and we're not going to get to all the exhibits. A view from our third level, looking down towards Rose and Michael's, demonstrating that the portion of our proposed building cuts off the sight line towards their house. Note that the Single Family Design Board approved a deck, which Rose and Michael built right here on the second floor, which looks right at our deck. However, there's also some privacy landscaping, which isn't indicated in this exhibit, which the SFDB determined to be adequate between these two, an adequate privacy barrier between these two houses. However, we want to make that a lot more private. We want to plant some additional privacy landscaping and some additional trees to make sure that this privacy concern is very well taken care of. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to have time to get into these specific view exhibits, but we're not impacting the ocean view from any house in any demonstrable way. We did some view exhibits looking towards Charlie and Consuelo's house. You can see that from the interior spaces, this red triangle is the area of non-visibility. Because of the solid walls, we are not going to be able to see down into their private outdoor use areas, nor do we want to. I'm going to skip through many of the other view exhibits. In fact, I'll just go in the interest of time. These exhibits are mostly showing that the uphill neighbors have elevated and commanding views looking over our property as well as the entire neighborhood below them. So here we have a view. This is from 1266 Forello. You can see the expanse of this view with ocean and islands in the distance, and here's our proposed project. You can see the story poles over there on the right, not breaking the horizon, not blocking TV Hill. This is our immediate uphill neighbor, Rick and Adele. Again, expansive view over the city. You can see hundreds or maybe thousands of houses. You can see our proposed project right here. And again, from the house right next to the west of Rick and Adele, a more oblique but very, very nice distant ocean view with islands, and here's an oblique angle of our house peeking up between the trees right there. I'm going to skip through view studies. We have a bunch of photos of the story poles, which hopefully the board has gone up to review themselves. There were no other significant views from public viewpoints that I think are worth pointing out. Okay, so I'm going to go to the exhibits and just quickly show you what we've done to address the, what we've done to modify the design. So we have reduced the FAR from 84 or 88% down to 84%. 167 or 160 square feet have been removed from the project. One of the board members asked us to bring this non-conforming area into conformance, which we have. We've sliced off that portion of the building. We're now fully conforming to all the setbacks. In fact, we're fully conforming to every single ordinance that the city has. Height limit, setbacks, open yard, everything. Notice that the neighbors on both sides of us are not and encroach into those setbacks by quite a bit. So we would love if they would contribute to the privacy effort and plant some privacy plantings to help their neighbors out. The upper level of the house, so because this house is encroaching so far into the setback, and they've in fact got hardscape going right up to the property line, we have pushed our third story back. We've adjusted the massing and peeled it 3 feet back from the setback. Last time you saw that this this upper level massing was right on the setback. The roof plan is reflecting that change, pushing away from the setback in that location. And I think that's all I'm going to say. I wanted to reserve some time for Katie. Do you want to quickly talk about the landscape plan?
Yeah, if you can just zoom in on that
you
sheet.
betcha.
So I'll quickly go through what's happening along the property lines. So we're doing new fencing, 6-foot fencing along the side property lines, as well as 8-foot high shrub hedging. Towards the street side of the property, we're doing a more columnar tree, currently called out as Brisbane box, to just show height with that elevation to make it even more invisible from that street of Farello. Down towards the sloping side, there's existing significantly sized oak trees that we're protecting. And then towards that slope side also we're adding some fruit trees and a few olive trees on the property. We're also introducing, I don't think Dan spoke about this, but we sandstone. So we have stacked sandstone down towards the sloping side of the property and then along the driveway entrance. So we're adding sandstone to this project to make it feel more compatible with the neighborhood in Santa Barbara. Otherwise, I'm here for questions. You can scroll down a little bit, Dan, and see some of the imagery. So as low water as we can, as permeable as we can, always. This is a high fire zone too, so we're being cognizant of that as well.
Thanks, Katie. So we are here requesting project design approval. We're ready to go. We have our civil drawings done, our landscape drawings done, and our application has been deemed complete. And as I mentioned, is in conformance, does not require any modifications, and complies with all of the relevant ordinances.
All right, thank you very much. It looks like we've got quite a healthy collection of public comment.
Yes. Chair Miller, board members, we did receive written correspondence on this item from, it looks like, approximately 25 people. That was distributed prior to the hearing. Ms. Gu, can you please switch over to my screen? Thank you. For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time. Please select the raise your hand icon and staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
At present, we only have one person on Zoom, and he does not have his hand raised yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please let me know if that changes. So we will turn to in-person oral public comment. I have quite a few speaker slips here, so I will call the first person up and then queue up the next person, so if you could follow that order. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. Please stick to the 2 minutes. You can see the room is full. Please press on the base of the mic. It will light up green and announce yourself. Speak clearly into the mic. First, there's no first name. It's R. Hornberger, I believe. And then next will be Consuelo.
And just an FYI, the microphone is already on, and just, yes, please speak into it so everybody can hear, please.
And may I add, just for expeditious reasons, if someone brings up an issue that you've already brought, there's no need to kind of rehash it over and over again, because we get your point, so. Anyway.
Good, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Is this on? All right, thank you. Reed Hornberger, I'm at 10 Rubio Road. We live exactly 2 homes above the 1269 Farello. And to your point, I will keep it brief because some of my comments will be covered by others. But I want to start, first of all, and I want to focus mainly on the discussion of the neighborhood preservation ordinance, and specific to that, consistency and appearance. And I think Holly made some visuals available to you. And if you have them or if they can be put up, I want to reference the work that Dan's group did at Anacapa in August 5th, the massing study. There's photos 22 and 23. Those are photos that give you an idea of the finished product in place. You cannot, I'm not going to point to any pictures here, but what I want you to understand is that this, in my words, is not a structure whose style and look is compatible with the neighborhood that we're talking about. It is very boxy. It is very abrupt to the passing of the road where it sits. And in the picture of the structure I have, you'll see that there's also kind of a wall and a gate in front of it. Farello Road in the Rubio neighborhood, we don't have fortresses and gates. We're not trying to keep each other out. This is just a very different look and appearance than what you'll see on Farello. The second point is to compatibility. When we spoke with Dan the other day, he was gracious to come by our home, and we spoke about compatibility, and Dan recited a lot about the compatibility in the numbers and the FAR calculations and things like that. And I believe Dan's right. I think he's fit the numbers. But to me and to the neighborhood, compatibility is about aesthetics. Does it feel like it's part of the neighborhood? Does it present itself as part of the Lower Riviera, the Spanish heritage Lower Riviera? And I think that's what many of us look at when we compare the styles of our homes. And yeah, there's some exceptions. And frankly, some of the people that live in those exceptions are dear to me. I don't like the home. I don't like what you approved, but there it is. You did it. And I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is let's not keep making the same mistakes and having very modern square structures in the neighborhood. I want us to go back as much as we can to preserving a compatible nature, a compatible look and feel in that neighborhood. There's more to talk about compatibility.
Sorry for the interruption. We have exceeded the 2-minute
sorry, I
time
wasn't looking.
limit.
It's up to
Chair
Mr.
Miller.
Chair if,
Was your point made?
It was made.
Okay.
And finally, one quick point. The neighborhood that we live in
Yeah.
isn't on the pictures and the maps that you all look at. This is the neighborhood.
Okay.
The neighborhood is the people that are here, and this is
Okay.
what we want you to hear. Thank
Got
you.
it. All right, thank you.
Consuelo, please. And then after that will be Michael.
Hi, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be on my way back from Thailand, but we came home early.
I'm
Okay,
sorry,
if
can
you
you
could-
speak into the microphone?
I sure
And-
can. I have some old photos of what our house, we have the Moody House, 1277 Farello. Can we get those passed around? And that's what it states in the historical housing, and that there's room around, and neighbors have their space, and everything's compatible, and that's not happening. As you see there, we're right on top of each other, and it's continuing to happen more and more and more, which is kind of really difficult. We just got home, a friend of ours, actually my daughter, took these photos of the story poles in the back. This is our fence here, these are the poles here, and they're huge. I cannot believe how huge they are. We just saw them, and granted, I'm tired. But if there's any way that you could go and see them, you're invited to come tomorrow. We'll make tea, we'll do whatever. But it's just so sad. It looks right into our backyard. We will have no more sun going into our bedroom anymore with this new story that they're putting up. Looks right into the jacuzzi. It's just really, really, really disheartening. I don't know what else to say about that. We love our house. We've kept it pretty much the same. My husband, we can't change it actually because it's a Moody house. So we have new ones coming in that are making changes more modern, this and that and this and that, but ours has to stay the same. So, I don't know what to say to that. And I just love our neighborhood and everyone together, working together and trying to get along and be good neighbors. And we really were receptive to Jared coming and wanted to work and that. And so, I don't know what else to say.
All right, thank you.
But I do want those photos back, if that's
Oh,
okay.
they're right here.
You may not have those.
Great photos.
I'll bring them back over as soon as the board's done.
Next speaker is Michael. After that, we'll have Charlie, please.
Yes, Michael Graham. My wife and I live, Molly, who is also in the audience here, we live at 1061 Garcia. We're around the neighborhood. We're not directly affected by this project, but we are indirectly affected. We walk our dog in the neighborhood and pass by this area almost daily. And so, in some respects, we're part of the public that is affected by this as well. And so, and I noted one of the ordinances or one of the neighborhood guidelines indicated that public views do matter in this, in this project. My wife and I have lived here for 10 years. We were drawn to this area because of the downtown of Santa Barbara, the neighborhoods. We recognized that the neighborhoods were very well suited to be and blend with the town of Santa Barbara. One of the things that I realized that when we came to Santa Barbara was the lack of high-rise buildings in the downtown. And what I realized also is that the community leaders here managed to review or observe the mistakes made by other communities in allowing high-rise structures. And so I think the community leaders here have wisely restricted that type of activity in this area. One of the things that we appreciate about our neighborhood is how quietly the houses sit within the neighborhood. And from my view, this project is incompatible with the neighborhood, and we'd request that the board deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie is next, followed by Isabel.
Hi, my name's Charlie Boss. I don't know where to start. We've just been 40-plus hours traveling. It was shocking to come around the corner, return to my house, and see those wires and flags up there. It was shocking. I'd heard from emails, and I thought, no, you're making a mistake. It can't be that big. But apparently it is, because I've looked at it. I don't understand why. And I haven't been able to look at the plans because we couldn't get them from we only could get the first couple of pages of plans. But I don't understand why my understanding of the second revision and the first plans were not very good for us, and they took away what I've documented once or twice already in letters to you. But this one now seems to be like 30% bigger. Why? I was told in the last meeting the architect was asked to improve and reduce, but is it just those few feet he was talking about on the FAR that he reduced? What about the height? What about the bulk and scale? There was something else I wanted to say, and I need to, okay, yeah, I've heard something today that I don't think, at least it doesn't reflect my sense of reality. When I showed you those pictures, and I hope you've seen them, I sent photographs that showed with a black line where the project would have come in the first plans. Now, it'll be like I say, it looks to me like 30% higher than that even. Those things are obstructing our view of our view that we've had for 30 years of Santa Barbara. People can, I'm sure they can look into our spa from.
If you could wrap it up, sir,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Okay. And no, I can't think of it. Okay, I'm sorry, but
Okay, well,
the whole way we experience our house is going to be changed. And I think, I appreciate the fact that you people are working here for free, I understand it. But I would plead with you, if you haven't gone there and looked at those story poles, and if you haven't looked at the site with the plans,
okay.
you need to do that to get an appreciation from our point of view, what this is going to be like.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Next speaker is Isabel, followed by Elizabeth, please.
Maybe we want to move to the next person, and then we can come back if she's not ready.
Elizabeth, please.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Isabel Venegas, I live at 1266 Farello, which is across the street from 1269. I live at 1269 Farello. So some of the pictures that were shown by the architect were from my deck. And from the deck, it's in front of the house. So the pictures were taken in front. But if you go inside the house, if you look at that picture on my phone.
Went away.
Part of my interruption, I think just for the commenters' benefit, I think maybe just stick to the comments. It might be a little bit troublesome to try to deal with the cell phone situation.
Okay, well, my point is that the pictures were taken from the deck, which is in front of the house. But if you go into the inside of the house and you take pictures, which I have here, and it's at night, and you can see the poles, and it blocks off all of Santa Barbara High School. So my view is blocked. And it doesn't show that from where the pictures that the architect took. And at our meeting, the architect had stated, what views are most important to you? Well, all of the views are important to me. So he was talking mainly about the ocean view but not necessarily the city view in my view. So that's important to me. And in my picture, it's taken at night so you can see the poles, how high they are, and all of Santa Barbara High School is blocked out of my view. So the height is blocking my view, and so I oppose the height of the building.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We have Elizabeth next, followed by Jim.
Hi. I live at 1281 Farello Road, and I'm one house above Consuelo and Charlie, which is two houses above 1269. My house was shown as a 3-story house from the west side. It's actually 2 stories of living space and a crawl space basement, above ground basement. From the street, however, it is a single story, and that's not shown. And that's my main concern, is that most of the houses on the south side of Farello Road are single-story presentation. And this would be a 2-story garage close to the street. They have set it back a little bit more, so that's good, but it's still going to be a towering kind of box, as well as the house itself becoming a 3-story, which presents another box. They do not block my ocean view, but because we're on a hill, I'm kind of at the top. I look over Consuelo and Charlie's roof, and before all I saw were trees after that. Now I see Consuelo and Charlie's roof, and I see the story poles. If you walk down the street, with one exception, all the houses go like this. And he did note the exception, it's a orangey kind of multi-story house. So that's my concern. Also, he noted the 1255 single-story modern house. That's beautiful. From the street level, it presents at less than a single story because it's slightly down. It has only a carport with a flat roof. It's a beautiful place. But from the street level, and someone who walks their dog twice a day in this neighborhood, this 1269 appears quite imposing. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jim, followed by Emma.
Are you able to put them up? Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
And Chairman Miller, they should be numbered, I think.
Yes, one, they are. Oh, to look at them? Okay.
Yeah, if you
Oh,
could.
So,
Yeah,
okay,
that's,
got it.
oh, that's very
Okay,
good.
please
Thank you,
proceed
Thank you.
with your
Excellent.
public
All right.
comment.
All right, I'm Jim Brinkman. I reside at 1261 Farello Road. I'd like to take this opportunity to share my observations of 2 recently built projects in the neighborhood that successfully met compatibility and privacy standards. Image number 1, the one you see up there, is a 3,400 square foot home located at 1110 Farello Road, rebuilt in 2018-2019. Developer increased the square footage to 3,400 square feet by creating a basement level and not adding additional stories to the structure. In doing this, the builder kept the home compatible with the existing neighborhood. When you drive up or down the street, this home appears to have been there for many years by blending beautifully with the surrounding homes. Could we go to image 2, please? Thank you. Another view of 1110 Farello Road from Medio Street down below. This is south looking north. The pool is to the right of the chimney, very close to the street, but at the same time completely invisible. Compatibility with the existing neighborhood was achieved with amazing results. Can we go to image 3? Thank you. This is something that Mr. Weber brought up. Here's one of his projects. It's another view of 1110 Farello Road from, sorry, not 1110, I've got to get to my next one here. 917 Paseo Farello, a home designed by Mr. Weber and his team. Looking at the home from this perspective, you will notice the height is barely above that of the street wall, and at the same time, substantially lower than any neighboring home and vegetation. This is clearly the least visible home as viewed from the street on this block. Image number 4, please, which will be my last. This is the view of Paseo Farello from the top of the driveway, demonstrating the highest visible elevation of this home. This structure, once again, is a Mr. Weber redo of an existing mid-century modern home, which stayed modern in design while maintaining the utmost form of neighborhood compatibility, making it the platinum standard of sensitive design. If Mr. Weber can design a home that achieves absolute compatibility in the neighborhood on Paseo Farello, why can't he do the same on Farello Road? Is it that Mr. Weber is less interested in compatibility, but rather more driven by his desire to make a statement in our neighborhood? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Emma, please, followed by Rose.
Well, what say you, Dan?
Ready? Okay. Hi, I'm Emma Brinkman and Mr. Jim's wife, 1261 Farello Road. In 2016, 2017, I had the privilege to speak before this board. At that time, my neighbors to the east were in the process of legalizing numerous violations on their property, including a third-story as-built south-facing deck. This deck had direct sight lines to my entire rear yard and patio. The board's decision was for the removal of this
Excuse
deck.
me, can we remain it to relevant to this current
It is,
project?
it will be, it will be.
Okay,
Please
thank
be
you.
patient. The board's decision was for the removal of this deck in its entirety. Anacapa Architecture is proposing a third-story deck, twice the size of the deck the previous board rejected. Currently, from my rear yard, I can see south elevation story poles and flags of the proposed project. My neighbor to the south submitted in public comment that they too can see the story poles and flags and have concerns of privacy loss. Neighbors to the west of them have mentioned they can also see the story poles and flags. It's a given that the two properties flanking the project will have profound loss of privacy. If built as proposed, this third-story deck will affect the privacy of 5 neighboring lots. There's an existing second-story deck on the proposed project site, which has spectacular, uninterrupted ocean, island, and city views. The applicant has proposed to enlarge this deck by extending it to the interior setback line. The applicant thinks he can improve on this view for the homeowner by going up 1 story and placing a 200-square-foot deck on the south side. While one homeowner will benefit from a view enhancement, it will come at the expense of privacy loss to 5 neighboring properties. I urge the board to remain consistent with the previous board's decision to reject an approval of a third-story deck that presents such a negative privacy impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next
that?
speaker is Rose, please, followed by Carolyn.
Or, okay.
What I gave you was from a letter that I wrote in September and didn't get put into the record, so I gave it to you to put it into the record. We have that, okay.
Please go ahead and we can vote the
Oh, okay. I just want to say that Mr. Weber is a bit disingenuous in his presentation of those homes that he showed. Most of those houses go down the slope, not up. When you're walking up the street and you look at the story poles, basically there's a big box. That's going to be a garage on top of a garage. I live next door at 1265 Farella Road in a Delfonso house. This is a photograph taken from my deck, and that is a privacy wall that I put up when I built my deck. The proposed 3-story redevelopment project at 1269 Farella Road is so large and so intrusive, it will impact my afternoon sunshine. I'll be in shadow at 2:30 in the afternoon. It'll impact my privacy and my quality of life. The Good Neighbor guidelines state that the large upper story windows and deck should not overlook adjacent yards. Well, this third story addition and the window that on the 3rd level and that wraparound deck look directly into my house, my patio, my deck, my backyard. I will have no privacy. The decking extends all the way across the back of the house at the 2nd level, and the 3rd-story deck wraps around the easterly side and faces my property. These will deprive me of my privacy because they look directly into my property, and the height will deprive me of afternoon sun. This Single-Family Design Board guideline number 19 state that an additional story should not overwhelm neighboring residences. This redevelopment project will overwhelm my house and the Moody Sisters house on the other side. I respectfully request that you deny this 3rd-story addition.
It does not meet the compatibility, the privacy, the single-family design board guidelines, or the neighborhood preservation guidelines. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, actually, they have it over there. Did you need it, or, because we need to keep it? We need to keep it, yeah, okay, thank you. That's okay. She's trying to get, 1 second. Put it on power.
Pardon our interruption, we're having some technical difficulties. We'll get started momentarily.
Okay. Just to confirm, it's Carolyn, right? Okay, thank you.
I'm
Next up
Carolyn.
after that will be Michael.
I'm Carolyn Hornberger. I live at 10 Rubio Road, directly above this property. You know, I think about what's changed since the meeting we had on September 12th, and from my perspective, absolutely nothing. Nothing was heard regarding our concerns. There were no concessions. They're not listening. I think the story polls tell it all, and hopefully you've all been able to drive by and walk around and see it from our perspective. We actually met with the architect on Friday. He came to the house, and one of the first things he said to me is, "I think you're resistant to change." I was offended by that. I'm not resistant to change. I'm very open to different architectural styles. My concern is that this house is, or this building is not compatible. In terms of size, bulk, and scale, it's 2 times larger than the average home in our neighborhood. As the architect just told you, it's made of solid walls. This looks like a warehouse. It doesn't belong in the Lower Riviera. It has a massive flat roof, which I will look down on every day of my life that I live in this home. The 3rd story is on the downhill side. The other ones he's comparing it to are on the uphill side and very tucked in. He said they're going to use 100% wood on the exterior of the building. There's nothing compatible with that in the neighborhood. It looks like a fortress, and what the building should be is it should be to scale and in design that blends in with the hillside, and it should have the support of the majority of the neighbors. 24 letters in opposition just for this meeting, in addition to the letters that were written for the last meeting. A petition that was signed by 36 individual homeowners in opposition. I just ask you that you deny the 3rd story or deny the project.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael, followed by Molly, please.
I have 2 images to submit for the record. And if you don't mind showing them. Ready, get set, go?
Why don't you go ahead and go, and we can work on pulling up those images.
Yeah, I'd like to have the images up when I speak, please. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's fine to have them both up at the same time. I'm Michael Marzola. I live at 1265 Farello Road. I've been a resident there since 1990, and observed the neighborhood. It's been pretty static in terms of changes up until the last few years. At any rate, my main concern is bulk and scale, the 3rd floor, the fact that it looms over our property with views right into our backyard, into our side yard. I'm a working artist. I have a studio that opens up to the city, and right now there'll be views from that house into my workspace. There's plans to remove certain trees, or actually large shrub that actually does give some privacy between the property. And the idea is, I guess they want to insert plants along the wall that divides us. To get a large plant grown to a site of 6 to 8 feet is going to take quite a long time. But my main concern, of course, is privacy, bulk and scale. And if you had a chance to review Derek Booth's letters, both letters, and Stephanie Moray's, both the letters they wrote, they really cover it quite well in terms of what the issues are. But I request you deny the 3rd story, and create something a little more compatible with the neighborhood. And that's it. Thank you.
Next speaker is Molly, followed by Wendy.
Hi, my name's Molly Graham. I live on Garcia Road, so this project doesn't impact me directly, but I think it's precedent setting, and that's what I'm worried about. We've all talked about size, bulk, and scale. We're not naive. We know architecture changes. It has to. People's desires change all the time. So I think everyone here has said they're not opposed to contemporary. It's just the size. It's huge. The story poles blew us away. It's been a topic of discussion for a couple of weeks now, and I hope you've all gone by to see it. Board Member Anderson, I think, talked about driving by a property and being able to see a view over it. That will be defeated. You will not see any view over this house anymore. About a year ago, we were out walking, and someone from the architect's office was there, and he said, we talked to him about, oh, what are you doing to this house? He says, oh, don't worry. He says, it's only going to be about 4 feet taller, and it will look nothing like that big gray structure up on the hill. Well, it looks a lot like that big gray structure. So we're a neighborhood. We know each other. We like each other. We don't know who this applicant is. We've never met them. All we've seen is an architect. So what are they going to do with this property? We don't know. Are they going to rent it out? Are they going to live in it? Who knows? But those are all things to be considered because it's huge. It's much bigger than any of the homes in the Lower Riviera. Also, we get a lot of cruise ships in. They always comment on the iconic view of the Riviera. Well, now we're going to have big boxes on the Riviera. That's not what we want. So architecture, we make mistakes. Boards make mistakes. I sit on a design review board. We make mistakes, but hopefully we learn. So we're hoping that you guys learn from the mistakes that have been made and that you don't approve this project. Thanks.
Wendy, you're the next speaker, followed by Stephen.
Hi, I'm Wendy Edmonds, and I live at 1234 Farello Road. It's pretty hard at this point with all the comments that have been made not to repeat size, bulk, scale, compatibility. So unfortunately, I have to say the same thing. But what I do want to add to my notes are that you're receiving a lot of manipulative information that's just not accurate, which is disturbing to me because I have sat on a board with the city, and you should be able to trust the information you get. So you learned this today from the architect that the Moody Sisters house is on the list, the historic resources list. You learned that Pat and Ken Kruger's house, 1255 Farello Road, is a structure of merit. Well, I'm 1234 Farello Road, and I am a structure of merit, but that was not mentioned. And I'm just down the street. I can see those story poles from my driveway. It doesn't affect my view, but it affects the look and feel of the neighborhood. As Liz Ricard was saying, the Kruger's house, 1255, it's lower. It's a modern house, it's beautiful, but it's actually lower. So the ridge line that she mentioned, this house, 1269, will be the Empire State Building of Farello Road. So I hope that you have been out to see the property and walked the street, because that's the only way that you can get a feel for what this is like. You can't get a feel from the lists of square footage and that sort of thing. Even if you look at, how am I doing here? 1257 Farello Road, which was the orange house that is substantial and 3 stories, it's set back from the street. So it doesn't affect the massive warehouse feeling that you get from this project looming so close to the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick question. How many more speaker slips do you have?
4.
Okay, if we could really speed up, and like I said, I'd invite you, if it's something that hasn't been brought up, I'd prefer that we're running way behind, so.
You got it.
And I understand.
You got it.
After Stephen, we'll have
Steve
David.
McMillan, 1 Rubio Road.
I've looked at plans for the last 40 years, and there's always a little fuzzy areas, but he's got, if you look at his site plans that a licensed surveyor did, and you look at his drawings, he's 31.6. He has drawn a fuzzy line there that sort of represents natural line, but it's not. I'm only going to go off of what the survey says. So that might be something we want to look at. And of course, this is the building department's area, but he's 1.5 feet too tall. You throw in some parapets, he's going to be 2 feet tall on the main house. The real problem is this garage. It is huge. It is 24 by 24, looming in the front. He talks about that this is comparable with other buildings. There is no garage like this anywhere. Anyways, this garage is sitting there with a 9-foot garage door. You know that, 9-foot garage door? That's a commercial door. I assume the owner has a Sprint van that wants to park it or something, but 9-foot garage door? Not in this neighborhood. It's just owner-driven here. This is all about the owner, and I think Dan's got his hands tied. He's trying, and it's that whole garage. That garage needs to be dropped, and if we could bring the main house down 2 feet, I think there's some movement there. But what I've heard is that there isn't a lot of give and take here. So take a look at the 2 foot on the house, or 1.6 from the building department, and 9-foot garage door. That's pretty big for the main house.
Thank you. David, you're up next, followed by Connie.
And for the person after David, if you could line up over here so we can kind of save time on the in-between. Thank you.
We received those.
Show both of them, that would be great. Could you have them?
They've received this, and it was distributed prior to the hearing.
Okay, can you show them on the board?
Oh, she wants to show.
You can go ahead and start, and we'll get those up there.
Yep. We have 2 slides we'd like to show you. The first one is the section of Ferrello that starts at the bottom of the hill, 1234, which is Wendy's house, and goes up. Can you get that on the board?
Kathy?
We'll get it. Yeah. City
It
TV's
goes
gonna-
up to the top of, it's on the right side. So it starts down at 1234 and goes up to the top where Rubio is. The square footages that we got came from the architect, and on average, they come out to about 2,100 square feet, which is on the second chart there. The number that we got from the architects last time, which is the last one before this latest review, was 3,500 square feet. Is that still the same number? Dan, is that still the same number?
Sir, this is your time to speak, and it's not
Okay.
the applicant's responsibility to respond to your questions.
I would argue that it's not the same number. The real number is 4,200 square feet, which is the gross square feet of the residence plus the garage, which is consistent with the average of 2,100 square feet. So this house is 100% bigger than the average of all the houses on that section of Ferrello. Aside from that, look at the picture in the story poles. The story poles, the picture does not lie. If you take your fingers and measure the distance of the roof to the floor, you can stack another house on top of that and have another half a house on top of that before you get to the top of the story poles. So you picture you're walking down Rubio, and you see all these beautiful little restored houses into the hillside, and then this monster looms up in front of you like a Godzilla. The thing is not compatible with the rest of the houses. It's twice the size square footage, twice the size bulk and scale. We recommend that you get rid of the top floor on the garage and get rid of the top floor on the residence.
Thank you. Next up is Connie. The last speaker's slip, I'm unable to read the name, but it's 1280 Farello Road. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Connie Hahn. I've lived in the neighborhood for 37 years, and I'm on Garcia. In the 37 years that I've lived on Garcia Road, there has only been one other time that I can recall that the neighbors were opposed to a building project. And so I want you to listen to us carefully, because lots of homes have been remodeled, lots of homes have been brought up to date with building codes, etc. But in 37 years, I have never seen a project of this size and scale. From the road, I don't think anybody here is opposed to this project except for those story poles. If you were to keep the roof line at the same level and build down and expand or whatever, I think everybody would welcome it and welcome a beautiful, newly constructed home in the area. I walked past this house every single day with my very annoying schnauzer for the last 37 years. I've had different dogs, but I've walked this loop every single day. And when I turned around and I saw the story poles, I went, oh my goodness, there but for the grace of God go I. Because the house down below me, which will be sold soon because Adrian Winter is not going to be here much longer, and his kids are going to sell that house, and that is going to be in front of my house next. And that is going to be over my dead body. And I would like all of you to look at the first project in 37 years that happened on Garcia Road. Use this for a perfect case study of what can be done and how you can please the neighbors in the neighborhood. And that was at 58 Garcia Road. And this was in the year 2013, and this was the Schaefer house.
Connie, pardon my interruptions. Chair Miller, we've exceeded the 2 minutes, so at your discretion.
Yeah, could you wrap it up, please?
I
That'd be
will
great.
wrap it up, and I'll just tell you that this was a house that was designed. The architect was Cliff May. It was beautifully redone after the proposed project was to do a second story.
Okay.
And it has been in keeping with the neighborhood, and we love the neighbors.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Please announce yourself for the public comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Vijay Gupta Alepola, and I live on 1280 Farello Road, and I'm told that's the first house that was built on Farello Road in 1924. And I bought the house and moved to Santa Barbara from the East Coast because the Spanishness of the area. And so when I was out of state yesterday, and I came back yesterday morning, and I looked at my window, all what I see is a box, reminding me of a Jack in the Box. I'm sorry. And really, and so the story poles really tell the story. And I respectfully, I'm not making any more comments because I wrote all my comments on my email last night. And I just want to add that I respectfully suggest that the third floor be eliminated from the design so that it doesn't interrupt the roof lines, the foregrounds, not the ocean. Of course, we get to see the ocean. Everybody on the hill sees the ocean. That's a given. But everything else in front of us is going to be blocked by this massive, I call it the albatross. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the speaker slips I've received. We do have a member of the public attending on Zoom. Ms. Gu, if you'd like to call on them.
Okay. Person is Brian Herkowitz, and I'm unmuting you now. Can you hear us? You have 2 minutes.
I can hear you fine. Hi, my name is Brian Hershkowitz. I live at 1022 Garcia Road, which
Pardon
is
my
directly...
interruption. If you're speaking right now, we cannot hear you. Give us just a moment. Okay, to the public speaker, can you try speaking again?
Yes, my name is Brian Hershkowitz. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I live at 1022 Garcia Road. My house is directly across from the project house. And I'm not going to repeat what other people have said, but I want to say that beyond the 6 people who said that their life enjoyment of their property views will be changed, we are on completely the opposite side of the canyon, but this is very forefront in us. I actually never saw the house that was at this property before. I've lived here for 21 years. I was very surprised when the story poles went up. What I basically saw was a group of men looking in my bedroom. No, they were doing their job, but they were directly across from that. And as you move to my house, which is a small house, we're about 1,800 square feet, as is fairly common in the neighborhood. But as you move to the front where our living room is and our outdoor space, which we use because our home is small on the inside, the story poles take up our entire view. And beyond having to see a structure and having people like facing my bedroom, my living room, my kitchen area, what I feel is like any amount of outdoor living they have on this 3rd level will greatly, change the quality of our life here. I think everyone else has said it really well, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last opportunity for public comment, so if you would like to make public comment, please do so now. Seeing none, this concludes public comment.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions of Vice Chair Collas. Do you have any questions, please?
That was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
It's taking a lot of notes.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The first question that I have is one of the letters that we received from the public was making mention of what appeared to be a transposition of numbers in the FAR calculations. And I didn't flag that, but it looked like there was a discrepancy between like the last 2 digits, between a 61 and a 16 or something like that. So I'm wondering if staff can clarify what the calculated square footage is currently, so that everybody's clear on that. And as part of that, if you could illuminate how a basement reduction or a basement calculation is done, so that everybody in the room understands that, and whether that's calculated into the FAR or not, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Vice Chair Collas. And actually, if we can go to the cover sheet, I believe it has listed the total net square footage. It's at 84% of the required maximum floor area. And yes, they are asking for a 50% reduction of the floor area at the basement. That is allowed per ordinance for partially below grade basements where the wall doesn't exceed 4 feet. And if you look at the floor plans as well as the FAR reduction that was included in the set, they do show that calculation.
So just for because somebody was saying there's a big discrepancy in square footage, so I'm trying to just illuminate why that may be for everybody. So somebody that spoke said something about, we think this is really 4,100 square feet. Can you perhaps parse out or show that, can you zoom in on that calculation so we can understand what that benefit is that they're getting from that 50% reduction? I think it may answer that question.
Thank you, Vice Chair Claus. So to the right, you should be seeing the total floor area proposed for the residence. This includes anything within the walls of the building. So the basement, the first floor, and well, all 3 floors, including the garage. And the basement level, you'll see Level 1, they note the total, and then below that there is a 0.5, so they're asking for a 50% reduction, and that's the 50% reduction of the basement level. And then that's the total to the right.
Okay, so to clarify,
If I may add, Vice Chair Claus, and to other members of the board, so just, and for members of the public, so our municipal code allows for a particular reduction when it's a partial basement. And so there's a very clear definition in the code, and so this is the standard by which our case planner, Ms. Plummer, reviews the project. So, and this is applied to all projects if they are proposing, again, a basement level that meets this particular formula and standard. And so we ask for each calculation of floor based on what that is. So this is an accurate representation of the floor area.
okay, so to be clear, the outside perimeter of this structure, when you add up all the stories, is 4,900 square feet. That's the gross square footage. The net square footage, which is to the inside of the exterior walls, typically give or take a couple minor exceptions, is 4,155 square feet, but then they're getting a 50% reduction in the basement number, which brings them down to the 3,361 square feet. So I just want to make sure everyone in the room is clear on that. That's maybe why there's this perceived discrepancy, okay? Question for the applicant. Can we look at, I'll let you choose what would be the best section, maybe through the, or maybe elevations, through the street and the proposed residence. I'm trying to get a sense of what the absolute, not relative, but absolute height is from, I'll call it average grade at the street to the proposed top of roof or parapet at the closest wall to the street. And I know the street grades down, so I looked at the site plan at one point, and I think it was, I think it's roughly 15 feet, but I don't want to speak for you.
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the garage is the closest part of the house to the street. So this is a section through the garage.
Okay.
You can see the property line, the garage is conforming, the setback, the garage is conforming to the setback. The height of the building on the street side is approximately 9, 10, 11 feet, 12 foot 1 inch.
And what is the elevation of the street there? Because it looks like your driveway is ramping up to that.
Yeah, that's correct. The driveway, I don't know what the elevation of the street is. It depends on exactly what moment you're at. The street slopes continuously, as it dives down along the property frontage.
Okay, so let's do some math. So
The building itself, though, to answer your question, is 12 foot 1 inch.
So you're saying this elevation is 264 foot, roughly 10 inches, I'm rounding up, and then there would be another 3 foot 1 inch above that to the top of your roof. And can we go to the site plan and find out what the elevation is at the street, please?
So it starts up at the northern end of the property, 255, and then as you get down to the southern end of the property, it's more like 249,
To the average.
plus or minus a few inches.
Okay, so to the closest wall, if you're cutting this section actually through that garage, you're at roughly 252, 251 and a half. Does that sound about right?
Well, you're ranging between 251 and a quarter and 254.
Say 252.
So it's all of those.
Okay.
Average.
Okay, so based on Chair Miller's number, which was 252 and a half, I'm doing quick math here, and I'm getting 15 foot 6 inches from what we're calling average street level to that front wall, to the top of that front wall. Okay. And I wonder if I have any other questions. I think that's it for right now. I really do appreciate the fact that you've lost the square footage and the side yard setbacks. I think that's a huge give to the neighbors, and I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have questions, please?
Everyone's done so much work. Wow. I mean, the architect, the public, a lot of work. I'm going to try to keep it short, but everybody's got to compromise somehow. I appreciate what everyone's done. I think, Mr. Architect, if you can, I know that you've looked at the story pools, and that's a check for us architects as well. And the height is very concerning for many. If you can address how you feel when the story poles went up, and maybe elaborate on the height, if you want to go over plate heights and stepping down the site to help us understand the project better.
Well, the story poles, I just want to remind you that we're not required by the FAR to put the story poles up. We did that at our election, and because the board and the neighbors asked us to. So we think the story poles prove without equivocation that we don't impact anyone's substantial views in a demonstrative way. So I was really, really happy to see that. And we worked really hard to make that happen. I think they also demonstrate that the project is, the upper level of the project is a very narrow footprint. It's a small component of the building that's at the upper level, and it grows in width as it gets down into the lower levels of the site. I think that it's probably, we did those photo simulations because looking at orange flags never looks that good. Go steel poles and orange flags doesn't accurately represent the way a building will look when it's done and when landscaping is done, like a lot of the beautiful landscaping that a lot of the other neighbors have to shelter their homes and provide privacy, and that's a big and very important part of our project as well.
You had a picture of how it blends, or a street silhouette, we call them. So didn't you in your presentation that you kind of...
We did. Did you want me to show that again?
Yeah, that would be super helpful. Because neighborhood is one, but adjacent, close proximity neighbors is even more of a priority in how it fits in.
Yeah, the house is, I think like we mentioned, it's all wood, and that is consistent with a lot of the modern houses, including ones that exist in the neighborhood, like the Structure of Merit just down the street is substantially wood siding. We want to do a naturally weathering wood so that it softens over time, and we want to do native landscaping that's consistent with a lot of like the deep oaks that you see in the neighborhood. I think it's going to be a really beautiful house, and you just can't really show that with story poles, unfortunately.
Do you have any site section at all so we can see the various floors in relation to the road?
Yeah.
And that didn't really give us the adjacent neighbors, which would have been nice.
I'm sorry. Oh, you want to see the photos of the story poles from?
Well, yeah, or if you have a site section that you could talk further around the different levels of the house, the basement. I mean, we all label them differently versus the first and second floor.
Sheet A1, A54, is that a site section?
Sure.
Yeah, and your plate heights I think are 9 and 10 feet, something like that.
Yeah, so this is the section that we were just looking at. The plate height in this upper level bedroom is 9 feet. And then in the main living level, it's 10 feet. And then in the existing lower level, it's 8 feet. It's really low. But the little addition that we're doing on the lower level steps down a couple steps below that. So I think that gets back to, well, I think that's 8 feet as well. But it continues to terrace down the hill. This is the addition down there, 8 or 9 feet. But it should be noted that this is all flat roofs. And when you have a flat roofed house, there's not an opportunity to get volume inside the house. So a lot of the houses that you see that have gabled roofs or pitched roofs have the opportunity to have a more substantial volume, which we don't have. So if we did, the overall roof heights would get higher and probably be a bigger impact to people's view, but then we could tolerate a lower plate height. But that's not what we're proposing. We're trying to keep the whole thing in flat, short pancakes so it stays as low as we can.
Yeah, cut into the hillside. So but the whole upper floor is new for the neighbors. They're used to just the single story and a pitched roof.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I get that, but it should be noted that because of the way that the street or the site slopes down steeply from the street, only one plus level, one and a quarter, is higher than the street, which is consistent with a lot of the other houses that you see on the street. And in fact, let me show you these photos.
Is your house in that photo right there, or?
Yeah, it's right here. It's right there. This view from the property directly across the street shows you that you can see the neighbor's house right here. That's that black ridge. See the height of that ridge?
Peak of the Mooney
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, we're only about 12 inches higher than that ridge. This is a 2-story house. It's quite tall. We're only about 12 inches taller than that. And look at how tall this one is up here. Like that substantially impacts people's view.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Board Member Ari Kellian.
I do. Can you confirm the plate height of the garage again?
The plate height in the garage is 10 feet, and then it goes down to the bedroom at 9 feet. So it steps down as the hill drops down.
Could we go back to the massing study that you just pulled up?
You want to see that?
The proposed garage from street view.
Yeah.
My question was if there were any other angles besides. Yeah, this is helpful, but are there any other angles beyond this one?
Yeah, this isn't much of a view because as you come down the street, the house is tucked in right at tree level, so it's very concealed from that point of view. And then we did one view as you're coming up the street.
That's all I have. Thanks.
I think a lot of my questions were already answered by the other board members, so I'm going to bring it back to the board for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
So I drove by here yesterday at around dusk. I saw the well-decorated home on Farello with Santa Claus peeking into the chimney. A few other things as I came around the corner. And it was actually, I was concerned that it might not be an optimal time to take a look at the story poles. But in fact, it was actually kind of great because in a lot of ways I was just dealing with a silhouette. So it kind of helped blur the eye a bit. And like I said, I came from the west side, so I was coming, I'll call it down Farello, as I came around that corner where the adobe house is. And I was surprised by the height of the story poles. So I parked, I got out of my car, left it there with the flashers on because it's a narrow road. And I asked, there was a homeowner out front in the property above this, across the street. Just asked them if I could get onto their property to walk about halfway up. There's sort of terrace steps up to their house, and I walked about halfway up and took a look at it. And then I walked up and down the street in the immediate vicinity. And what struck me most, and this is going to be repetitive as to some of the things that we've heard, is that most of the houses on the south side of Forello, or what I'll call the downhill side of Forello, they read like a one-story structure or less. The Ken Kruger home is about, I'll call it a 2/3 story, and the carport is a low 1-story. The house flanking it, which you can see in this picture, to the east of the subject parcel, is 1 story. The driveway goes down to it, and the front wall is the eave side of that residence, so it's the low end. So in other words, the ridges beyond that set further back from the street. And that, I think, is the case with the Moody home also. I would imagine it has a taller pitch just because of the nature of that architecture, but I believe that the low side is on the straight side. So, I mean, conceptually, I have less of an issue with, although I'd like to be able to force the applicant into a particular style because I think it would be appropriate for the neighborhood. I hear what you say and what you heard a couple in the last thing, that, yeah, homes are personal things and people like modernist architecture right now. But I think the Kruger home is a perfect example of how somebody came into a neighborhood with a divergent style, and they recognized the need to be deferent to the neighborhood. And I don't think that the massing as proposed is, although it checks all the boxes from a planning standpoint, I do think it's going to dominate that side of the road and sort of that neighborhood context and silhouette. So the issue that I have with the project, more so than architectural style, more so than, you know, the amount of square footage, is the fact that we've got, you know, roughly 15 to 16 feet of height from the pedestrian level to the top of this, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 2 stories in height. If you're assuming kind of an 8-foot story, it puts us somewhere between 1 and 2 stories. And I think what's adding to that mass and that feel is the proximity of the front wall to the street, and the fact that now, so right now the residence has a driveway that goes down to it, and it's a 1-story structure. So it's almost like you look over the top of it. But now what's happening is you've got a driveway that's coming up, and then you've got like 1.5 stories more. And so it's kind of the double whammy. So that is that's what I'm struggling with here in terms of being able to make a neighborhood compatibility finding. More so than, I mean, square footage, I think you're where you need to be with the reduction in the basement, et cetera. And I am concerned about the privacy issues. I think it was the last speaker, the Zoom speaker, his comments were almost the most concerning to me, because if he experienced disruption to his privacy with the workers up there putting the story poles up, it tells me that clearly windows at that elevation or a roof deck are going to do the same. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson.
I appreciate all of you took care of the encroachment on the side yards, and all the studies you did. It's a lot of work, and everybody wants to maximize density right now. And you did the 3-foot setback on the second story. But yeah, compatibility, I guess, with the neighborhood is still a concern of mine too. It feels a little too stark, modern, so soften the modern is a suggestion. It feels a little too stark, and there's lots of comments from the neighbors in that direction. And, you know, the hillside design, it is, for me, the story poles are, you know, and they look super stark, and oh my gosh, it's something new. It's not a single story sloping down the site. It's hard to accept the new. I understand that. But yeah, the scenic views driving up Farello, for me, are important to see out to the ocean as well. So if there's a way, I know there's a way, you can reduce the size of that garage and bring everything down a little bit so that the views aren't as blocked as significantly.
Okay, thank you. You're on.
I want to say thank you to the applicant team for all of the additional information, especially the 3D renderings. Those were very helpful in my study. Do appreciate an improvement to the FAR. So there was a discussion at the last meeting about modern flat homes and how they fit into the hillside, and I think a past home in near the Mission was referenced, and how those were near Spanish homes, and how the placement of that home was done in a very discreet manner. So what I ended up doing was I walked starting at the 900 block of Farello yesterday, went up to Farello Place, then kept on walking past the site up to the 1300 block of Farello, then went down Olive Rubio to just better understand, you know, looking up into the hillside and then looking down into the ocean, and how each house expresses itself in terms of the massing, looking up and looking down. Appreciate all the public comments. I think what some of them have resonated to me is when I go up and I look down to the water, all of them do look like a single story. But when I look north into the hillside, they all show 2 to 3 story. I mean, I understand this is a very challenging place to develop, narrow lots. People are very close to each other. I appreciate what you're proposing and not doing the setback encroachment. But it's challenging, and you know, when I was walking, I kind of did my own visual street silhouette, and you know, I kept going, particularly 1255 Farello with the flat roofs, and I kept going all the way up to this property, and you know, I'm seeing this natural stepping in the neighborhood. And then when I saw the story poles, it felt irregular to me. And I wanted to make sure I was looking up and then I was looking back down. And you know, I'm looking at 7 SP of our guidelines. It says here, structures are integrated with the setting when new dwellings and additions look as if they belong to the neighborhood. also says in the guidelines, integrate structures and a site plan with the neighborhood. So based on my assessment of the guidelines, also page 53H that discusses apparent height, you know, I believe the garage is placed high, and I struggled a lot with this massing study. I really appreciate you providing it in color and seeing the different angles, but I really struggled between that and what I actually saw with the story poles. I believe it's not just an issue of plate height with the garage. I believe that the garage, just the building itself, needs to be lowered, and as well as the top floor. I believe it needs to create a much more low profile with the hillside than what is being proposed now. There looks like a lot of grading is being, grading in terms of, creating a upward slope into the garage, and believe much more study needs to be put in bringing things down. I really like 1155 Farella. It's a flat roof, but it's really stepped down. 917 Paseo Farello. It's very difficult for me to see the entire structure from the street. Appreciate seeing those images and walking by it as well. So I believe that it needs to follow that pattern. It's not just about plate height now. It has to be about bringing it down, bringing down the house, the floors, so it's more set into the hillside. With that, at that point, I feel like it will be supportable on my end. Other than that, appreciate the landscaping along the perimeter, and let's see what else I have. And I appreciate quality architectural materials are being used with in an earth tone color, and that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to talk about the landscaping because that's not controversial. No, I know. You're a good architect, and I've seen what you can do, and your incredible attention to detail. And I'm saying this to you because I'm kind of want to say this, and it's kind of a follow-up to what Board Member Arkalian said. It has to be reduced somehow so it's more diminutive. I love that word, you use that all the time. Diminutive to the neighborhood. Like the way the garage is too tall and too big facing the street. You're a good architect. I'm thinking you'd be a brilliant architect if you can take this into account and make these neighbors happy. And that's the only thing I'm going to say, because you're going to have to use your creative forces and understand the situation and look at it as an opportunity, not as if you're being attacked or side railed, but as an opportunity, because the current situation, I can't support it because of the situation. It's not because you're bad or whatever, it's just the context of the neighborhood compatibility issues, and you've got a palette here that's already been painted. So you're kind of stuck trying to paint a house in something that's already been painted. And so you've got these variables that are very challenging. This was an open property, where there was no houses and no neighbors. I mean, it'd be wonderful, but that's not what's happening here. So it's like this analogy, a diamond is created through a lot of pressure. So I guess that's the only thing I can say. So with that, will someone make a motion?
Mr. Chair, can I have your attention just a moment? Can I ask I'd love to ask for a quick recess if I could speak with the applicant team outside, and I'm happy to share what that means, so like when I come back, if we could just take a maybe a 3-minute break, I mean, it could be really short.
Well, I noticed you're calling for a 5-minute break after this project anyway, should we just call it?
You can, it's at your discretion,
Okay.
so long as the timing works that you don't have to take that 5-minute break.
Well, let's make the 5-minute break now,
Okay.
and then you can speak, and then, so we'll be back here at 6.
Great.
Oh, that's,
wait,
clock
that's
is
the wrong
wrong.
time. It
Gotta
would
get that
be-
clock fixed.
It would be
5:35.
It would be 5:30.
5? Okay, my clock's fast.
All right, we've got incorrect clocks. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, if I could just speak with the applicant team.
Okay, great. to reconvene the Single Family Design Board. I think we're at a moment to entertain a motion. I don't think it's quite ready for design approval, but
And so just, Mr. Chair, through you and to the rest of the board and to members of the public, I just spoke with the applicant team about permit streamlining. So there's a timeline, a shot clock that begins as soon as we deem a project complete.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted them to be clear on what those dates were.
Okay.
And we do have room on our calendar for a continuance, should the applicant wish, that we could get them back on January 17th. So that's.
wow. Okay. All right, got it. All right.
Are you looking for my input on that?
It's, I think it's to the board to make a motion, and if there's any follow-up questions from the applicant, Mr. Chair can.
So what you're saying is the next time they can come back on the board is January 17th? Okay, that's correct. Okay, all right. All right, well, would someone like to entertain a motion, please? If no one speaks up, that means I'm going to have to make a motion.
I think we're all going to let you.
Okay, I'm going to move to bring, to have the project come back to the full board with the following comments. We appreciate the client's efforts of his research in terms of the neighborhood. We appreciate the materials that he's used for the house. We'd like the architect to explore also continuing to reduce the massing of the house so the presence is not so dominating in the neighborhood. We understand and respect the desire of the client wanting a modern style architecture. However, due to the already prevalent styles and sizing and massing of the houses surrounding it, we ask the architect to take that into consideration when reducing the massing of the home, and to take into account appropriate landscaping, explore reducing the massing of the garage front as it appears to the street, possibly lowering the grade so that you are going down to the garage as a suggestion, not as a requirement. And we look forward to seeing how the architect will address these issues. That's my motion.
I'll second that, but I think it's important that we provide specific direction to the applicant so that they're not in this churn, because sometimes we give them ambiguous language, and I think it's important that we give them more specific direction. So, and I'm not doing that to be problematic, I'm doing that to try to move this along. I feel like what we're all saying is that this thing needs to read more like a one-story from the street, given the proximity of the closest wall to the street on that garage massing. And I'd also like something added about the third floor deck.
What would you like to hear about the third floor deck?
Privacy issues for neighboring, for flanking residences need to be addressed as it relates to the third floor deck.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to write this down, or should I reword it? Or do you have, or can you read back what the motion, how the motion was made?
Was that a correction to a statement that you made?
No,
Ms. Chair
it's an
Miller?
addition to.
Oh, in addition
The
to.
addition of the concern about the, pardon?
And Mr. Chair, can you just, Mr. Chair, can you please confirm that you, do you need it read back, or are you second, or do you agree with that amendment, that addition to your motion?
I agree with the amendment to the motion as she specifically spells out the issue about the third story and the privacy issue with the decking, with the neighboring homes.
Thank you.
So I'm going to re-second that as amended.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus?
Yes.
Okay, Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
And Board Member Killian?
I wanted the motion repeated by staff before I approve
Okay,
or
sure.
deny.
Okay. The board appreciates the efforts for the materials that were used. Reduce the massing so as not as to be so dominating to the neighborhood, so that it appears similar to other homes as a one-story as viewed from the street. Appreciates the modern architecture, but the applicant should take into consideration when reducing the massing. Explore the massing of the garage as it appears as viewed from the street, and looks forward to the applicant returning. And appreciates the reduction, any reduction, and so as to accommodate the neighboring properties.
Yes.
Pardon my interruption. I believe we also had taken into account appropriate landscaping. Okay.
I didn't hear anything in there read back specifically about the privacy and deck issues.
The privacy issues for the flanking neighbors should be studied in regards to the third-story deck. Flanking, yeah. The two adjacent to the subject parcel.
I would love if that could be clarified further because we've already done that extensively.
I guess what I was trying to get at is my comment previously about the fact that when the story pole installers were up there, there was a significant privacy issue for a neighbor. And so I don't know if that means removing a third floor deck. I don't know if that means putting a taller parapet on it. I don't, it's not my job to solve the problem. I'm just concerned that there's clearly a privacy issue at that elevation. And I'm not convinced that it's resolved yet.
So I understand the frustration with the architect, but I think you pretty much understand the situation we're in right now, and you need to address it. And you can fight it and do it, but we're going to just keep coming back to this. We've got 25 people here from your neighborhood pissed off. And we can't just, it's got to be addressed. So we're trying to tell you, this is what you've got to look at and try to work with and address it. And hopefully we'll get it through.
And Mr. Chair, I think we're still waiting on one member to vote, if I'm correct.
That is
So
correct.
we've got an open motion on the floor, and I just want to make sure we get through the roll call so
Yes.
that we can clear that out and make sure if it passes or not, and then it would need to
Okay, Board Member
finish
Killian?
this.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
And I'm going to ask, we're still having a meeting. There's another item after this, so I'd like to ask everybody to please step outside so we're not interrupting the next applicant.
Well, you should have made them. Oh, that's right. Would have been. Yeah, get it. Okay, the room's empty, the air's cooler. Oh, okay.
I recall being in situations like this where I was like, now I'm his turn, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if that's gonna work in my favor or against me the next time. Could go either
You're
way,
right.
couldn't it, Mr. Radke?
Okay,
It's hard when you have a mission to pursue for your client.
This is the full current, and then this is your presentation set.
did I steal it?
Full plans.
That was, oh, maybe I took it, oh, I took it because it has the name. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, we got 2 more projects. Oh, we got 1 more. Edgewater. Okay, I'd like to resume the Single Family Design Board. We're on to item number 3, 2315 Edgewater Way. The project here is a continued item. Project design approval is requested. Proposal to demolish an existing 2-story single-unit residence and attached garage located in the Hillside Design District, an appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and construct a new 3,285 square foot 2-story residence with an attached 730 square foot 2-car garage, 600 square foot basement, and 625 square foot accessory dwelling unit. Project includes a new pool, driveway replacement, removal of several non-specimen trees, and hardscape and landscape improvements. The proposed total of 4,640 square foot on a 22,651 square foot lot is 99% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. Approval of a coastal development permit was granted by the Planning Commission on October 6, 2022. Subsequent appeals were filed by Mahesh Balakrishnan and Jill Ryan. The project is scheduled to be heard on appeal by the City Council on February 7th, 2022. Again, project design approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District plot findings and grading findings are required. Project was last reviewed on May 23rd, 2022.
Chair Miller?
Yes.
I have to excuse myself for this item due to an economic conflict of interest.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have minutes from the previous meeting, please?
I should state for the record that I abstained from the last meeting because I hadn't reviewed the previous minutes, but I have done so now, and so I believe I'm in a position to weigh in on the project.
That's correct. Here are the meeting minutes. 1, the board generally finds the size, bulk, and scale of the proposed project to be aesthetically appropriate. 2, the board generally finds the massing and roof lines along the west elevation to be an improvement and are aesthetically appropriate. 3, the board generally finds the proposed glazing at all elevations are aesthetically appropriate. 4, at the south elevation, study increasing the mass of the horizontal building element between the first and second stories. The board stated that story poles would not be required for the proposed application.
All right, thank you. If you can address those notes, that'd be great.
Chair Miller, members of the board, thank you so much for your work. We might, just to refresh, we might just click through these images to remind you all, it's been a few months. We'll just haul right through this once. Yeah, here we go. That's the view from the street. This is the neighborhood. Zooming in, Edgewater. This is the long, narrow lot in question and the building to be replaced. This is a really good, interesting exhibit that I think wasn't shown exactly like this to all of you at SFDB, but when we were at PC, we showed them this to help. They did come to the site and have extensive site visit, and it was unanimously approved at PC. You can see we're 2315 with our proposed project, and the appeal is principally from the neighbors to the west, 2321 and 2317. You can see there, just for context, 2317 is a flag lot that has a 17-foot wide piece of their property that goes out to the street. And so we're set back from that, and 2321 as well is set back from that 2317. And those folks have written letters discussing their sense of privacy and appropriateness of the project. I think you can see here in yellow is the exact footprint we're proposing, just again for that context, and we can keep going. This is the neighborhood, predominantly 2-story with a few 1-stories sprinkled in. That's the neighbor directly to the east, the neighbor directly to the west, with the little access road, which we'll show a photo of. This is the property where the new project is proposed, 2315. Kind of a long view where you can see the street angles across the fronts of these properties, so you can see the sort of existing vegetation and big trees existing. This is that driveway flag that comes out. This is 17 foot 6 inches wide. On the left is in the next, you can see to the east on the left-hand side of that image is the existing stuff, which is set back 6 feet from the property. You can see on the right-hand side of that photo, the fence and vegetation that lines that driveway. Next. This is the south face of the existing stuff. It's kind of an older hodgepodge of things that were moved around from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's the yard at the bluff side. You can see that two-story neighbor to the east that frankly will be, extend closer to the bluff than what we're proposing. This is looking out to the ocean. Next, looking down the bluff. Next, the specifics of the site that reaches down this long slope to the beach. Next, with the site plan on there, you can see the coastal bluff as defined, the setback from the bluff as defined by the geologist, a pool and some patios that are on the, landward side of that setback, and then the patio that the great room of the main floor walks out onto. You can see again, the context of the neighboring properties in their footprints and so forth. Next. This just gives you the addresses and the property lines. Next. The demolition, in essence, the existing structure will be removed. The floor plan, this is the site plan. And, you can see an entry court, and the garage stays in the same position, and essentially the site slopes from the street down to the main floor level. Next. The landscape plan. Do you want to just say one or two words at all, Courtney?
Well, yes. I can present our plans, though, when we get there.
Okay. That's the landscape plan, civil plan, basement plan, second floor plan, roof plan, site section. This is the elevations looking from the street side, so you can see the garage with the ADU above it, and you can see the entry court with the sort of entry and arrival into essentially the great room at the ground floor level. You can see here a section that goes through the proposed project, the flag driveway in the middle, and then the two-story house there, which is a very nice property. And then further to the left, you can see that white two-story house on the far left side. They're 6 feet away from that neighboring property, whereas we're 6 plus 17 is 23 feet just from the property line. So as the city of Santa Barbara goes, this is a pretty good setback for city living. Next. Exterior elevation. So the east elevation, you can see the garden courtyard at the right and the great room at the left with the primary bedroom upstairs. Next. This was the only comments that we got from the minutes, and it was about the proportions of that trestle, if you will, which covers the south patio. And that is actually very subtly changed. That header, if you will, above that whole thing, that assembly is several inches taller. But as well, the two legs on the side previously were landing 1.5 feet lower. So we've changed the way it meets the ground. So the overall proportion of that thing is less tall altogether, and we have ever so gently responded to the request for a thicker header there. We've also beefed up the mullions a little bit. This is the western side of the building that between the first review with you and the second one, we reduced the glazing at that ADU by 56%. So it was cut, more than half of it was cut out, specifically in response to the neighbor to the west. And you guys found that to be helpful, and the breakup of the massing helpful. Next. This is our view from the street, and we do have the landscape plans. This is a bunch of historic stuff that was really planning related.
Okay, is that the?
You're on. Yeah, just the landscape concept, which has been
Sure.
developed since you
So
last saw the project.
I don't believe we were here at the last presentation, so since you've seen this, we've been engaged in, basically we just have a series of small gardens. The overall style is sort of Mediterranean coastal, and I can kind of walk you through using our plans, but this isn't quite that. Do you want to pull up the planting plan? It'd be further down. Keep going. Keep going, one more. Okay, so we have a few trees being removed, total of 7 removals, 5 will remain in place, and we're proposing 8 new trees. All of that was reviewed at Planning Commission and very well received. The trees we are removing are along the western property line, and we have a tree protection plan we can present as well if there are questions, but most of them are eucalyptus in various stages of health, and then there is a canary palm kind of volunteer that's quite short. And all of those were recommended removals in the arborist report. We are keeping 1 eucalyptus. You can see that black and white symbol there. And the others need to come out just because they're kind of hazardous and then conflict with the building foundation. In terms of the design, we have some hardscape materials I can share on a separate plan. And then in terms of the planting design, generally we have hedges along both property lines. We're proposing podocarpus. The intent is to plant, the tallest available so that we can get some nice screening and privacy there. We have a number of small fruit trees in the design. The client really wanted to have as many fruiting and edible things as possible, so those are sort of kind of interspersed in the ornamental design. There's a couple of citrus trees there, a couple at the back, and then we have an avocado in the front. The palette, it's mostly purples and whites and low and a few medium water use plants. I can show the materials palette as well, unless you wanted to wait until the end and do those all together, but I also can speak to the irrigation plan just briefly. Everything will be on drip, mostly low water, and because this is a bluff side residence, the intent is to prevent as much water as possible from heading towards the bluff. So our development as a whole is pulled way back from the bluff edge, but the irrigation and the drainage also follow suit, so that's required. And so we have actually 2 irrigation plans. This is our, standard irrigation for the planting design. We have another page, which is what we're calling our stormwater dispersal irrigation plan. So what this is there is a chamber tank system that's under the driveway that will contain all of the stormwater. All of the storm drains are directed there, and then it will be dispersed through a drip system, which you can see it's that, parallel lines along the front. And that will be activated only when the tank is reaches a certain level and pumped out. And there's a number of existing trees in that area, so the idea is that they would just be irrigating those existing sycamores and other things. And then if you go back one more, I can just show or keep going. Yeah, sorry, the other direction? Looking for the construction plan. And this is maybe reversed. Or I can navigate. No, you want to go back, sorry, the other way. Nope, is it that one? Yes. Scroll down. Okay, so the materials palette, I'm trying to get to the images on the left there. Generally, we have a cobble proposed for the driveway, and you can see the image on the top left in that image palette down at the bottom. So cobblestone on slab, and then in the back, we have a tile material, and that would just be kind of in an ashlar pattern. It's all the materials are kind of warm, sandy tones. And then we have some decorative gravel in a few areas. The narrow walkways on either side of the home will have gravel. And we also have some colored concrete just here and there, some of the steps along the back, and then we have a little bit at the front entry. So I believe that concludes my part of the presentation. If you guys wanted to cover any of the architectural components.
We should just show the palette, which is also unchanged from previous. This earthy, light Mediterranean palette with the body colors lighter and sandy colored, traditional tile, and then bronze and dark brown and earth brown for the window colors. And we're available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Did we get any public comment?
Chair Miller, board members, we did receive one written correspondence on this item distributed prior to the hearing. Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time by selecting the raise your hand icon. Staff can call on you and you can unmute yourself. While we're waiting for those on Zoom, is anyone in the audience wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
I do have one raised hand from Mahesh Balakrishnan.
Great. Mahesh, can you hear us? You would have 2 minutes to speak.
I can. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I did submit most of my comments via email, but I did not submit one, which I just sent by a follow-up email because I wasn't sure how long this would go, and I have a meeting soon. But I'll quickly summarize and just add the additional point. I would like you to just, during this meeting, bring up the windows on the west side of the subject property and even just compare it to the windows on the east side. The windows on the west side are massive. Even if there was a concession made on the ADU side, a big chunk of the property looks on my backyard, which, I have a spa and I obviously paid a lot of money for the property. I completely lose that privacy. We're talking about windows that are at heights between 15 and 25 feet. So a little bit of a 6-foot setback does not provide any privacy at all. And I'm obviously trying to be as accommodating as possible in terms of just asking for improvements so that the windows on the west side, at least on the southwest side, look more similar to the southeast side. So they're more light sources than, stuff that when people stand there and look back, they can look into my backyard. There's also a palm tree that was providing some cover from that. As the presenter has mentioned, many of the trees that are on the west side of the property are going away. That does not help from a privacy standpoint, particularly that palm tree, which provided some level of cover. And the other thing was the hedge, which, having some specificity around what that height is would be very, very helpful. Again, these windows are at 15 to 25 feet. So starting this anything less than 15 feet or something will just sort of like be probably a decade before it provides any cover for me. So just wanted to reiterate those comments. Please do pull up the windows along the west side of the property. Many of them just directly overlook my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you see any other raised hands?
No other raised hands. Wait 1 second. Hold on. No other raised hands. Thank you.
Okay, this concludes public comment for this item. Back to you.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
The other guy did.
One question.
Before you speak, does the city have anything to say, since you have a representative here?
Good evening, Chair Miller and board members. Kelly Broderson with Community Development. Yes, this project was reviewed by this board previously and received positive comments and was forwarded, as you mentioned, or he mentioned, Planning Commission approved the project, and subsequently there was 2 appeals filed by, one by Ms. Ryan, who lives at, her address was 2317 Edgewater Way, and one by Mahesh Balakrishnan, who's at 2321 Edgewater Way. So because PDA is also an appealable decision, rather than take the Planning Commission appeal to council and then return to SFDB, we wanted to have the SFDB weigh in on whether or not the project's ready for PDA, so that if that approval also gets appealed, we can hear those 2 appeals at one council hearing. So it sounds like, as far as the board's purview today, the main concern from Mr. Balakrishnan is the windows on the west side and the loss of landscaping, as you heard from him. So if we
Got
could
it.
pull
Thank-
that up, that would be great, too.
Okay, thank you.
So can I just ask a clarifying question? Are we in a position where we can actually act upon a PDA? Can we make a motion for PDA, or are you just asking for our comments related to that? You want us to act upon it so that if there's subsequent appeals, those can be all rolled together?
Chair Miller and Board Member Kalas, yes, please do.
Okay.
You can make a motion for PDA if you feel the project's ready for PDA.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 3 questions. The podocarpus that are proposed for, well, I guess both side property lines, but more specifically the west property line, what size podocarpus are you proposing?
Chair Miller, Ms. Kalas, so we have on the plans, I think, 24-inch box sizes for those. And typically, as I said, we like to indicate, tallest available, because it varies depending on what's in the nurseries. So, that's quite large, and there'll be a cost associated with that size and that quantity. But I did check in with a contractor we work with a lot just today to see, how tall could those be if we ordered them today. And he's, about 9 or 10 feet is how tall they would be according to what's available today. So.
Okay, so then that goes to a question to staff, because I thought the maximum height allowable on a common property line is 8 feet. Was that correct?
Chair Miller and Board Member Klaus, yes, for a fence, hedge, or wall, but you can also go up to 12 feet with a minor zoning exception. So yeah, basic trees don't constitute necessarily a hedge unless, we have hedges all over the city of Santa Barbara that exceed 8 feet, so it comes down to neighborhood discretion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Radke, you mentioned that there were some proportional changes that had been made to, I'll call it the loggia, and if you could just walk us through those more, a little bit more detail, like maybe how much wider has it gotten, how much taller has it gotten, how much shorter has it gotten?
Chair Miller, Board Member Kalas. Generally, because it was positive at all of our reviews, in essence, we were taking a light hand. We were asked to study what we could do. So if you see the assembly at the head there, that was right there, that's just over 3 inches taller altogether. The elements to the right and left are 1.5 feet shorter because the little patio used to go inside, and I think that was what the SFDB was kind of interested in, the proportions of what was going on with all of that. And so because of that change, in essence, those legs are now 1.5 feet shorter, so that changed the overall apparent height of those things because they hit the ground sooner.
Okay.
That's the gist of it.
Okay. And is there a landscape lighting plan yet? A conceptual landscape lighting plan?
Yes,
Can we
I
take a
didn't
quick
get an
look at that
opportunity
and
to.
just
Mhm.
have sort of a broad overview of that, please?
Sure, it's, should be this one, yep. So, we just have a number of path lights that are, it's kind of hard to see, but that, maybe Shaheen can help. It's that symbol that's a circle with an X through it. You can see it there, yep. So those are our path light. We have a few along the paths around the perimeter. And then just a couple at the arrival walkway outside the door there. We have a series of steps there as well. So we have some small, very small fixtures in the little, cheek wells along the stair. And then I think that's it. We have an accent fixture on the olive tree at the front, in front of the wall there. And I think that's it. It's very minimal, it's a small area, so.
Okay, those are the only questions I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, please. Questions?
Questions on just the 2321. You had the site plan and the west elevation and the concern of privacy. So the further, I guess, windows that and patio he's looking at. So it's that far end.
That's the, Chair Miller, board members, that's the west elevation, and you can see that there are some more windows at the south end, which in essence look out on the driveway of the southerly property, not Mr., not the 2321's property.
I think it's an interesting point also to note, Chair Miller, that the project has a 6-foot setback from the interior property line, and there's also between this project and the neighbor property to the west, a driveway, in addition to a 6-foot setback.
So a 17-foot 6-inch property intervening between these two things, six-foot setback on our side, 6-foot setback on their side, and then the southerly windows actually aren't adjacent to that property in question.
those first Planning Commission, I think, images that were easy to, sorry.
Wonderful. Okay, do you have a question, or are you just trying to?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
I'm trying to move on, we're running late here. That's okay, no problem. Board Member Ari Kaling, do you have any? He's not here, that's right, never mind. Board Member Klein.
Yes, just one question. Along that west property line, specifically 2321's backyard, besides a hedge, did you study any other trees or palms? Or can you walk us all through what's happening along that area as far as plants, where the windows are?
Specifically, okay, sure. So if you want to try to pull up the planting plan again. So generally, the eucalyptus that are being removed through there are, as I said, pretty hazardous. A lot of them are quite small and kind of hanging over and have lots of dead branches on the top, things like that. Even the one that we're protecting, Leslie Wiscombe, who's on the Planning Commission, had suggested that we potentially look at removing it when we get into construction because it is hanging over the existing house quite a bit, and there's a lot of dead wood in the crown. So just wanted to note that. Generally, we didn't want to plant new trees on either side of the house because it's so narrow. It's about 6 feet from the face of our building to the property line. In the area to the south of the existing eucalyptus, so there, it's even narrower because we have a little retaining condition. So there's a low stone wall that varies from 0 to 18 inches, I think, along the property line there. And so there's not a lot of room really for trees. The best we could do is implement a hedge to give privacy. And I just wouldn't recommend planting anything in such a narrow space because of the root intrusion issue. So.
Thank you. That's my only question.
The plate heights in the house, when you first, it looks like it's on a slope, so the living room plate height, not the plate height, the ceiling height in the living room, and does it get lower as it go forward towards the street?
Chairman Miller, members of the board.
Oh, I see it steps down.
So in essence, the ground floor steps down, but the upstairs has the floor goes straight across, and there's a sort of a design for intergenerational family members and future accessibility. So the upstairs is just one level, just goes straight.
So what is the ceiling height in the living room right currently? 13 feet, 8 inches. In this great room.
And so it's
Was that-
13'6". That hasn't changed from previous, and in essence that follows the site down. So there's approximately 6 feet of grade change from the street out to the bluff, or perhaps even more. And so we're responding to that as subtly as possible.
What's the plate height where the garage is?
In the garage
The ceiling height
itself,
of the garage.
It should be 9'6".
So the ceiling height of the garage is 9'6".
No, that's the plate height in the garage.
Chair Miller, can you confirm your mic's on?
Yes.
Thanks.
But I'm asking the ceiling height, so it's 9'6" is the plate height for the garage.
yes, and that runs in to the house proper as well. So it's a split level in the main part of the house. So in essence, the site terrain is kind of dictating all of that.
Ever asked you to lower the plate height in previous meetings?
Yes, and we did. We discussed that at the last meeting, and the board was okay with
I
that.
don't want to rehash it, I'm just kind of surprised. And in lieu of the appeal, okay. Okay, that's my only question, so I'll bring it back to comments. Vice Chair Collas, do you have any comments, please?
I think the project is ready for PDA. I understand the concern of the neighbor at 23. I think it's, I don't know, the northerly of the two westerly neighbors. But when I'm looking at the site plan, it looks like there's quite a bit of existing vegetation on their property, which would be their east property line, based on the plan that I'm looking at. Not this plan, but the landscape plan that we were looking at a minute ago. It wasn't, there's a lot of different plans we've been looking at. It was the more diagrammatic of the site plans that showed 23, 21, and 2317, and there was some diagrammatic planting illustrated there. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of tall vegetation that appears there on the westerly neighbor's parcel. And I think between that and the inevitable growth of what will be 8-foot podocarpus planted, that those privacy issues will probably abate over time. Those are my only comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson.
Yeah, I did review the videos and minutes too as well, just so you know.
Thank you.
For helping. Yeah, no, when I originally reviewed the 100% FAR, I was like, wow, that's a lot on that site. But with the beautiful, eloquent ADU included, it makes sense, and it's done well. I believe its size is compatible with the most immediate neighbors. And thanks for the bluff elevation. The silhouettes really help with scale. And the architecture, design, and materials are definitely amazing and high quality. So thank you.
These are questions, comments.
Oh, we were comments, yeah.
We're comments, right? I lost track. Board Member Klein.
I agree with the other board members. I think it's ready for PDA. I think the style is compatible with the neighborhood, high quality materials. I think the planting is sufficient along the property line. A 24-inch box is quite large, and podocarpus grows very fast. So those are my comments.
You got these approvals, but I have to say, and I'm surprised this didn't come as an issue before, but the plate heights are high. I think the plate, and I'm not going to change it. Relax. But the plate height in the garage should have been at 8 foot, so that and I think the reason I'm saying that is because of the maximized that you went to the site, and you've got this other maximized building over here, and it's almost like a series of apartment complexes now. Not that the plates you have are beautiful, but based to the impact of the adjacent properties, I think it would have been nice to have this just lowered a little bit, just to turn in the massing. So I'm going to put that in the record because I know you're going through appeals, so that might be one of the issues that may come up that might help rectify, but I don't know. But I'm not going to, I will support the project the way it's drawn. So whoever wants to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to give the project design approval. And I would be comfortable moving it to consent for final, unless there's issues from the board. And I will add the comment that the applicant might consider reducing the plate height in the garage. And I think based on, is that so the second floor windows are lower? Is that what you were going to say?
Just keep going. It's all
Okay.
good.
And we're going to, I'll also add in the motion that the board would be willing to support a minor zoning exception or exemption for a 12-foot hedge along the westerly property line.
I'll second.
Could the maker of the motion reword the motion saying that one of the board members suggested lowering the plate heights, but it's not a requirement to this motion?
Yeah, if you can change the language in the motion related to that, that would be helpful.
I have considered reducing the plate height of the garage. Consider.
One board
Yeah,
member.
I think one board member, I think
Yeah.
that's helpful.
So that
Yeah.
Thank you.
Given the appeal, yeah, thank you.
He's like, okay.
So yes, I'm accepting that amendment to the motion.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes.
All right, may I have roll call, please?
Okay.
You have to
We
make
need
the
to
findings.
make the findings, required findings.
Okay, so we're going to make neighborhood preservation findings that the proposed project is consistent with the scenic character of the city and the neighborhood, specifically the architectural style that's being proposed seems to speak well to the neighboring properties. Although the project proposed is roughly 99% of FAR, we recognize that that's also including the ADU, and that is designed in a manner where the size, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the neighborhood, even with the inclusion of the ADU. Quality architecture and materials are being used. The trees that are being removed have been addressed through arborist reports and have been accepted by the Planning Commission. And that the public health, safety, and welfare are appropriately protected, specifically through the removal of what could be hazardous trees. Good neighborhood guidelines have been addressed in terms of the landscaping materials that are being proposed to reinforce privacy. The lighting being proposed is de minimis, and there is no significant effect to public views.
All right.
And that it's always interesting when we're on a hillside here, but on the bluffs, but the project works with the natural topography, and specifically the site planning adjusts itself to the variation and step down in the natural topography on the property.
Creating findings.
This has been reviewed, there's a stormwater management plan in place? Okay. So, because stormwater management plan is in place, we don't anticipate any increased siltation or degradation to water quality of streams or water courses, and there is no loss of oak woodland habitat as a result of the project.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes.
Board Member Achille. I'm sorry, Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Chair Miller, if you could announce the appeal period for
All right,
this.
there's a
Thanks for your service.
six-day appeal period for this project. Thank you very much. 10-day. I apologize. There's a 10-day appeal period for this project. Thank you. Is this the last project on the agenda? We have, so you're not going to leave yet?
No.
Thank you,
doing? You're welcome. We'll try to make
Is your office on Milpas Street?
Yes.
You know, I have always admired that little building that you are in. And I don't know, are you on the second floor or the
We
first
are,
downstairs?
we are. There's a computer.
I feel like a little IT thing down there. I've always thought that was the sweetest little simple kind of Moorish. It's just really nice.
I'd like to move into our fourth item. It's a new item, concept review. The address is 925 Jimena Road. Proposal to construct a 788-square-foot main level addition and a 1,139-square-foot basement level addition. 50% counts towards FAR to an existing 2,654-square-foot single-unit residence located in the Hillside Design District. Project includes an interior remodel of the existing single-unit residence and 465-square-foot garage. A 90-square-foot shed will be relocated out of the setback. The proposed total of 3,924 square feet of development on a 23,958-square-foot lot is 83% of the guideline maximum allowable floor to lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Welcome, if you'd like to introduce yourself and show us your project.
Chair Miller,
Ella.
board members, apologies for interrupting the applicant. I just have a correction to the project description
Sure.
before you. It should not be a 1,139 square foot basement. The basement, there's an existing basement, and there's an addition of 585 square feet to the basement. 50% of the basement can be deducted from the FAR calculation.
So that what brings it to a total of 1,130. Got it.
Thanks.
Alan McLeod with A34 Studio.
Lauren with A34.
All right, thank you.
Yes, the project was reviewed by the board about a year ago. And we, yeah, it's all becoming clear now. Is it like deja vu? Yes. So it's located at 925 Jimeno. We processed the project about 18 months ago through to the building department. And the client decided, because of financial reasons, to revisit the project and minimize the project and kind of reduce it. So now we're at 83% FAR. And we're looking at an addition remodel versus a knockdown that we were proposing earlier, which is a much more simplified project. So now that the memory cells are all kicking in, located on a very tough triangular site, you're all aware.
It's very contemporary.
It was a very contemporary home. It was beautiful. And we're going to make this one beautiful too.
Of course you are.
We're not moving the garage as previous. We're keeping the existing garage where it is. And if you turn to page A1.00, you can see the existing footprint and the proposed overlaid on each other. So it's a much more reduced scale. We're pretty much keeping it on the same angle of the existing home with the slight addition to the east and a small addition to the west and south, which is effectively the same footprint location as the previous dining room was located. So, and where the tree was, the one that died. We can go to 110 just to refresh everybody's memory of the existing home. It's a hipped roof, board and batten, nice proportioned windows, which we're going to kind of work our way through as we kind of work through the project. So moving to the 2.10, we have a small addition to the basement, locating the stair, and it'll all become a little clearer when we go to the upper floor. But we've got basically a bedroom and a den downstairs with a bathroom, so it's very much reduced with a similar idea with the deck opening to the south and west side. Obviously, again, reduced deck size as well. If we go to the upper floor, entry remains the same location. We've done an addition to the master bedroom just to get the master bedroom functioning. And then the largest portion of the addition on the house is actually just for that dining room and stair and a rework of the existing kitchen. It has the same feel as the overall project. Like I said, it's just reduced. The big difference between the existing and the main is that we've removed the hip roofs because the client wanted a volumetric space within the master bedroom and in the living room. So we're removing the roof, going with a gable end roof, and that is to allow that volumetric space to occur within the two living spaces. And then we can come through to the elevations. We've also raised the plate just on the central core, so I didn't want the existing ridge to run through. It was a little too monotonous. The central core, the main living space, it has a lot more variety in that roof form just to be able to break that, pop it up in that location. And then if we basically will then move just to that south elevation, which we did a rendering for you on 3.03, just to give you a feel of the home again in comparison to the previous. It's far more reduced. We kept the outdoor fireplace element that we had in the previous scheme, and from a landscape standpoint, we'll be kind of approaching it from the same way. We're looking at doing steel doors and windows on the south elevation, and then keeping a board and bat actually on the upper level, and then a stone base or plaster base, depending. Again, it comes down a little bit down to how it all works out as we kind of work our way through this. So there we have it, a lot more condensed version.
Thank you very much. Did we get a public comment? Hold on.
So, Chair Miller, board members, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item. And seeing as though no one is here in the audience, we will move to Zoom. Ms. Gill, can you
And I
switch
do not
over?
see any attendees on Zoom at this time. Thank you.
Let's just do the screen just as part of the record. And we're not seeing anyone on Zoom, so Chair Miller, back to you.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Claus, do you have any questions, please?
Can you just confirm what the height is for us at the, I'll call it the central gable?
It will be 2'10" higher than the existing ridge right now. So the existing ridge is 14.2.
Okay.
We kept we kept the master bedroom ridge and the garage ridge the same. We just popped up on that central core.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then can we look at the south elevation quickly, please? Okay. Okay. So there is a break there in the rendering. You kind of lose the break between the, I guess it's the easterly wing and the central wing, and so I just want to make sure there was a break in the roof lines there.
Yes.
I think those are my only questions.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson.
I think you cleared up most of my questions. So did you bring any neighborhood context? I didn't see the original, but this is a new submittal. I don't believe I need to see. Yeah.
I actually didn't bring any of the original context.
Okay.
But we can bring that next time for sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So neighborhood compatibility. I need more information on that. The lower floor is not an ADU, it's just an addition
just-
for the family.
Yes.
Okay. And you're going towards like a modern farmhouse, some of sort?
Of sort.
50s.
Of sort. Yeah.
That's the only questions I have, I guess, at this point.
All right, thank you. Board Member Arkalian.
Can we go to the roof plan? So what was the existing roof before, and what is it?
It's an existing hip roof right now, so you can see it in elevation. There's a series of hips. It's got a larger volume in the middle because of the enlarged depth of the house for the middle hip. And basically the hips don't work if you want to create a volumetric space inside for the master bedroom and the dining room space and kind of that living space. So that's why we went that direction.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, on the elevations, it's not shown, but I'm assuming it's all stone. Is that what they're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
We have the stone.
Like on your south elevation?
Oh, and plaster.
Oh, it is plaster.
Originally, on the original home
I
that
know
we
it's
had,
expensive.
the plaster that we converted it to, and then the stone element is for the fireplaces.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
the stone you're showing is only the fireplace,
Yes.
it's not the base. So
Yeah.
you're like a smooth trowel plaster?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Kalas.
I think it's a relatively straightforward project. I think it's, I actually don't think there will be any significant change felt from a neighborhood standpoint. I would encourage the use of a more muted color palette. I'm seeing painted off-white, and I think of something a little bit more muted that speaks to the sandstone were used, that it would be appropriate.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson?
I still would like to see neighborhood context, at least your adjacent neighbors, in any privacy or view or items that we may not be looking at because we just don't have the information. And then I would recommend furthering a more distinctive design style with detailing and materials. Yeah, and a little more study on the roof line, I would say, breaking it up maybe a little bit more. And there, on that elevation right there, there's an edge of that ridge on the main portion that seems a little unresolved to me. So those are my only comments.
All right, Board Member Arakelian.
Appreciate the applicant providing the color and material board. I do like the off-white. I am in support with Vice Chair Kalas's comment, making it more earth tone to blend with the sandstone that's proposed. Yeah, definitely more straightforward than before. I would say, I do have a question. Can we go to page 10? Yeah. The posts at the deck, the supporting posts.
Yes.
How would you describe those? Just steel or?
At this stage, we're looking at a steel post.
Okay.
It minimizes the massing down below to carry that horizontal plane.
Thank you. I think the project should be moved forward to the consent calendar. Believe it's very, very straightforward, and agree with Board Member Anderson. Seeing some neighborhood context as a refresher would be nice. That's all I have. Thank you.
My only comments is it still kind of feels the same as the original home, only cleaned up. So I'm not concerned about, for me, I'm not concerned about the neighborhood compatibility issues because the style of the home is still the same. It's just a more cleaned up version of it. Based on the colors, it looks like it's pink based on these drawings. So it's hard for you to.
Yeah, the rendering, the index on this
Probably would
is
get a
just different.
board that has more accurate colors because I can't comment. It looks fine to me. So I tend to agree with Board Member Arkelian. I think it's ready to go for consent. So if anyone would like to make a motion, concept review, comments only.
Chair Miller, board members, we'd still need a motion to continue indefinitely to consent
Okay.
with comments.
Which would include that we're amenable to a PDA or something like that? No?
No, just that they should, consider X, Y, and Z when they return.
Okay, all right. Someone like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that the project be continued indefinitely to the consent calendar with the following comments. That the board recommends looking at the easterly end of the primary gable and consider what appears to be an asymmetrical gable condition there. That the color of the board and batten as proposed be changed to a more muted earth tone to correlate to the Santa Barbara sandstone chimney elements. That the applicant provide a full landscape plan along with a lighting plan, and that the applicant provide photographs illustrating neighborhood context for the edification of board members who were not involved in the previous iteration.
Well, and can I add, you have all new windows and doors, right? I mean, so there is potential neighborhood privacy issues that we would want to look at. That was another point for the neighborhood context.
Yeah, we can add that, so it's for clarification and for confirmation that there's no conflicts with privacy for neighboring parcels.
Sounds good. Just a note, it is required as part of the planning application completeness letter. They're still in process, so we've requested those photos.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second that. I want to ask the maker of the motion to consider when it returns to consent that it be considered for PDA and final.
I'm amenable to that, as long as it's deemed complete by staff at that time.
Yep.
So yes, I accept that amendment.
Okay, can I have roll call, please?
I think Mr. Arakelian needs to re-accept that as a seconder.
Second.
Okay. Okay, am I rereading it or?
Sure, why don't you just stay here till 8?
Okay.
Yeah.
Continue indefinitely to consent for PDA and final. The board recommends a review of the easterly end of the primary gable, study the asymmetrical condition that exists there. The board and bat is to match the proposed sandstone material. Provide a full landscape plan and a lighting plan. Provide full photos of the full context for the board members that were not present at previous meetings. Provide a completeness statement letter including any neighborhood impacts and privacy impacts.
Ms. Gu, I have a few corrections.
Okay, cool.
Comment 2, consider a more muted earth tone for the board and bat to match the other proposed elements of the residence. And then can you strike project design approval and final approval from the header of the meeting minutes and put it as a comment? The project can return for project design approval and final approval as a board comment.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Akilian,
Yes.
and Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for waiting.
I thought you were going to kill us when I looked at the parcel. It's like,
That concludes our final project. I'm concluding the single-family design forum for December 5th. Thank you very much.